Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some unsettling horror stories from Reddit, and like the title says, we are getting into some unsettling stories. And they're scary, they're wild, and they are just horrifying, so you want to make sure to stick around. I appreciate you stopping by. It means the world. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 1 million subscribers before the end of the year, so please subscribe. It helps more than you know. And this video will be long enough already. You guys have been loving the long videos, so here's another super long video. So enough yapping with the intro, but sit back, relax, grab a drink, and grab a snack. And without further ado, let's get into some unsettling horror stories from Reddit. The Shift, written by Emily Knight. We met at a pool party. I remember that day clearly. It was in the middle of an unforgettable heat wave. Alfie smiled at me from across the pool, and the rest was history. Not only was he gorgeous and completely unaware of it, but he was also a fantastic listener. No matter who he spoke to, he listened intently. He was never just waiting for his turn to speak, never just nodding absent-mindedly. He absorbed every word, eyes bright and understanding. Later, when I told him that was one of my favorite things about him, he smiled and said, "Most people just want to be understood. It isn't difficult if you pay attention." He has always paid attention. Even in the early months of our relationship, he remembered everything. How I take my coffee, which side of the bed I prefer, that I can't sleep without my bedside fan or my childhood teddy, Scrappy. There had always been a quiet predictability to our life together. We'd wake up at the same time each morning. I'd shower first, he'd make coffee. We'd meet in the kitchen in the soft light of dawn before the day properly began, moving around one another with the ease that comes from long-term familiarity. Sometimes we'd talk, sometimes we wouldn't. Silence never felt uncomfortable. Then came the shift. He was handing me my morning coffee. "Milk and 2 sugars, right?" I laughed because I thought he was joking. We'd been together for 9 years, married for 4, and I'd never taken sugar in my coffee, not once. "No sugar, you're sweet enough," he'd say. We had both been sleeping a little less than usual lately. I put it down to nothing more than a brief moment of forgetfulness caused by tiredness. I kissed him on the cheek, took the coffee, and told him not to worry about it. Then he started watching me in my sleep. Now, I've always been a light sleeper. A change in temperature or a shift in the light will wake me. For years, that sensitivity never bothered me. If I woke up in the early hours and turned my head, I'd find Alfie beside me exactly as expected. Fast asleep with one arm tucked beneath his pillow, breathing deeply. Recently, though, I'd turn to face him and find him already awake, not moving, not on his phone doom scrolling, just simply lying there, looking right at me. The first time it happened, I smiled at him, still half asleep, and asked him what he was doing. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Did I wake you?" "No," I told him, and reached for his hand beneath the covers. But it kept happening. Not every night, but enough for me to pick up on it. Each time, the explanation was reasonable. He'd woken early, he'd had something on his mind, he hadn't wanted to disturb me by getting up. Although it made sense, it kept me up at night. There was something about the way he was watching me that bothered me. It wasn't intrusive or intense. If anything, it was gentle. The same attentive expression he'd always worn around me. But lying there in the dark, meeting his eyes before either of us had fully entered the day, I had the faint, disorienting sense that something was off. I just couldn't put my finger on what. Even with minimal sleep, life continued, as it does. The usual routine of work, dinner, and an evening lounging on the sofa. All the normal things. He became more perceptive than ever. more aware of my moods, quicker to anticipate what I needed before I asked. It felt, on the surface, like a deepening of the same gentle love he'd always shown me, which is why when I'd catch him staring, I'd tell myself it was nothing more than a look of admiration. And for a while, I had no reason to believe otherwise. With time, the staring crept its way into the daytime too. I'd be washing the dishes and would catch him in the reflection of the kitchen window, standing behind me, still as a statue, just watching me. I'd turn around and he'd spring back to life, tending to whatever menial task had previously garnered his attention. He also started repeating things I said. It would happen hours after the initial conversation, sometimes even the next day. He'd do it casually and in a slightly altered context, as though the words had occurred to him independently. One afternoon, I mentioned that the air in the house felt strangely heavy. It wasn't a particularly unusual observation, just something I had said without thinking as I opened a window. At the time, he'd simply nodded, but then later that evening, as we sat on the sofa scrolling through Netflix, he looked around the room and said those exact same words. The air feels strangely heavy. I waited for a sign that he was joking, that he was deliberately echoing me, but instead he looked mildly contemplative, like the thought was completely his own. When I asked him what he meant, he shrugged. I know it might not sound like much, but I can't express how unlike Alfie these behaviors were. There were other changes too, like slightly delayed responses. I don't think anyone else would have picked up on it, but I knew my husband like the back of my hand. He was changing. If I laughed, he laughed, but a little too late. If I frowned, he frowned, but after a pause. It felt like he was mirroring me, as though without my lead, he wouldn't know which emotion to express. One evening, after a particularly shitty day at work, I relayed my frustrations to him. It was nothing dramatic, just office politics, the sort of thing we discussed 100 times before. As I spoke, I watched his face. For a brief moment after I finished, his expression remained completely neutral. Then, as if remembering what should come next, his features arranged themselves into sympathy. "That sounds frustrating," he said. The words were correct. The tone was correct too. And yet, for reasons I couldn't properly justify, I felt uncomfortable. Enough was enough. I decided I would call him out on it, hoping to clear things up to stop me feeling so on edge all the time. "You've been a bit different lately," I said one day as we cleared the dishes, hoping I didn't sound too accusatory. He looked up at me, his expression blank. "Different?" The word hung between us for a moment. I felt a flicker of embarrassment, wondering if maybe I shouldn't have said anything. I opened my mouth to soften the blow, to explain that I hadn't meant anything serious by it, but he spoke first. "I'm sorry if it feels that way. Work's been taking up more space in my head than I realized." His voice was warm, reassuring, just like always. I nodded, already prepared to let the matter go. But then, in that same even tone, he continued, "You've seemed a little on edge yourself recently." "What?" I said, surprised. "I assumed that maybe you were just tired. You haven't been sleeping properly." He was right. I hadn't. With a small, sympathetic smile, Alfie stepped closer, resting his hand lightly against my arm. "You've been noticing things more, haven't you?" I nodded. Sometimes, when you focus on the little things too much, they start to feel bigger than they are. I contemplated the words. It wasn't until that exact moment I considered maybe I had been the problem all along. The conversation began with me expressing a small uncertainty about him, but now I was questioning myself instead. "Yeah," I eventually replied. Like you said, I'm probably just tired. From then on, I deliberately tried to stop noticing things, telling myself that it's easy for ordinary behaviors to appear unusual if you examine them too closely. So instead, when he paused before responding, I tell myself he was just thinking. When I caught him looking at me from across the room, I assumed he was just admiring me. When small details slipped, like a forgetful moment or a repeated phrase, I let them pass without comment. This worked at first. The house felt calmer, but underneath that calm ran a thin, persistent awareness that I was working quite hard to maintain it. That I was adjusting my own perception so that nothing he did would seem unusual enough to question. I snapped out of that mindset one evening when he did something so strange and out of character that I just couldn't ignore it. I'd been brushing my teeth when I caught him staring again. I spun around and met his gaze, expecting him to smile or say something. He didn't move. He didn't break eye contact. He just stood there, hands by his sides, head tilted slightly, staring. Something about his eyes bothered me. They were a little too wide, and there was a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. And with it came a feeling I'd never felt towards Alfie before. Dread. After what felt like eternity, he parted his lips to speak. "You've been brushing your teeth for a while now. Everything okay?" How long had he been standing there? He walked towards me, eyes unblinking. Instinctively, I took a step back. He noticed and let out a chuckle, seemingly amused by my uncertainty. I tried to stand my ground as he approached me further, but my body flinched as he raised a hand to my shoulder. Another chuckle. "Come on, darling. Let's go to bed." My heart sank. Darling? He never called me that. I was certain then. He was different. So in the days that followed, I began testing him. While pretending everything was fine, I purposefully changed small details in my stories to see how he'd react. The old Alfie would have questioned me, maybe gently corrected me, but this altered Alfie didn't register. Or if he did, he didn't let on. I spoke about the day we first met, describing it as a snowy day in December. He didn't correct me, so I kept going. I talked about wearing a brown fur coat when we passed each other on the street. I told an entirely fabricated story, watching him closely, waiting for him to burst out laughing or call me out on my bullshit, but he didn't. He listened without interruption, smiling softly. That evening, as we lay in bed in the dark, he rolled onto his side and said softly, "You're as beautiful as you were the day I met you." I froze, waiting to see if he'd taken the bait. I knew even then that you were someone I could build a life with. That beautiful snowy day changed everything for me. I felt sick. I rolled over and pretended to be asleep, but I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay there, staring at the wall, wondering where the Alfie I knew and loved had gone. I cried softly as he slept, oblivious to my heartache. The next morning, he handed me my coffee. "2 sugars," he said. "Extra sweet, just like you." I set the mug down on the counter a little too forcefully, startling him. "We didn't meet in December," I said flatly. "It was August, during that awful heat wave. Remember?" He looked up at me, confused. "No," he said slowly. "It was definitely December. It was snowing. You were wearing that brown fur coat." I scoffed and shook my head. "I've never owned a fur coat in my life. You know I hate fur." He held my gaze, as if waiting for me to correct myself. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely sure," I snapped, grabbing the mug and pouring its contents down the sink. "And I don't take sugar in my coffee." "Yes, you do. You always have. 2 sugars. Sweet like you. Are you feeling all right?" "No," I snapped. "No sugar. I'm sweet enough." We stood in silence, waiting for the other to cave. "Sorry," he muttered eventually. "I've been a bit forgetful recently." I'm sure you're right." He looked genuinely sorry, and I felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't raised his voice, he hadn't said anything unkind, and there I was, snapping at him, slamming things about. Something I never did, not even on our worst days. I had acted out of character, and the irony of that was not lost on me. I exhaled deeply, the fight draining out of me as quickly as it had arrived. "No, I'm sorry," I said quietly, unable to meet his eyes. "I shouldn't have snapped like that." He accepted my apology and kissed my cheek before leaving for work. Once again, I couldn't shake the creeping suspicion that perhaps this really was all my fault. That I was the one distorting ordinary moments into something they weren't. I felt like I was losing my mind. That evening, I would doubt my sanity once again. I was getting ready for bed. Only Scrappy wasn't on the pillow where I'd left him. "Alf," I called, tearing apart the duvet and searching under the bed. He appeared in the doorway, wearing a pair of blue pajamas I'd never seen before. He normally slept in his boxers. "I can't find Scrappy," I said, putting the pajamas to the back of my mind. "I've looked everywhere." I was met with the blank stare I was becoming all too familiar with. "Scrappy," I repeated. "I can't find him." Alfie pointed to the cupboard. "Why is he in there?" I asked. "You put him there." What? No, I didn't." Yeah, you did. You definitely put him in there this morning. I watched you do it." I tried to think back, but all I could remember of that morning was Alfie's sorry expression and the guilt I'd felt for accusing him of being different. A dull ache pulsed behind my eyes, so I closed them, pinching the bridge of my nose. Maybe he was right. Perhaps I'd accidentally tidied Scrappy away. That didn't feel right to me, but it wasn't entirely impossible. I couldn't focus in the office the next day. He had definitely been wrong, hadn't he? Of course we met in the summer, right? Had I really put Scrappy in the wardrobe by mistake? Then I started to wonder if it even mattered at all. I eventually concluded that perhaps it didn't, and once again, I was prepared to let it all go. I stopped by the bakery on my way home from work to get some of these blueberry muffins he loved. A peace offering. A way to put this whole thing behind us. I let myself in the front door. Box of muffins tucked under one arm. Before I could shout hello, I noticed him sitting on the sofa with his hands placed neatly in his lap. He wasn't doing anything, just sitting there, staring at the TV. It was switched off. Our eyes met in the reflection of the black screen, and he slowly turned to face me. He raised his arm robotically and gave a forced, unnatural wave of his hand. "Ah, you brought muffins." His voice was devoid of emotion. "Chocolate?" "Blueberry." "Oh." His mouth formed a thin line, and he slowly turned away from me. "I thought they were your favorite," I said to the back of his head. "I'm allergic to blueberries." I stood there, dumbfounded. He absolutely was not allergic to blueberries. He wasn't allergic to fucking anything. Anger surged through my veins, but I bit my tongue. He was messing with me. He had to be. "You weren't the last time you ate them," I muttered. "Look," he replied, taking a deep breath and turning to face me. "I don't know what's going on with you recently, and I didn't really want to say anything, but I'm starting to get worried. You keep getting things confused, and it's clearly making you angry. That's so unlike you. You've just been so different lately." "Me?" I scoffed. "You're the one who keeps staring at me and copying me and being all fucking weird." I had never raised my voice at Alfie before. He looked shocked, then disappointed. He shook his head solemnly. "See what I mean?" he said quietly. "You've got it all backwards. You're the one doing all those things. I wake up in the night and you're just watching me, staring at me. And you keep repeating things I've said. Really weird, insignificant things like, ooh, the air feels strangely heavy in here, when I'd literally said that exact phrase only hours before. What? There was no way. That couldn't be possible, could it? My heart began to thud and my head spun, causing me to stumble backwards. Alfie jumped up and rushed over, offering me his arm. I took it, trying to swallow the sickness that was creeping up from the pit of my stomach. Let's talk about this later, okay? He said softly, before kissing my forehead. Why don't you take a nice bath? We can both take a moment to cool off and we'll have a chat this evening. Sound good? I nodded. I took myself upstairs, locking the bathroom door behind me. For a while, I just stood there, hands clutching the edge of the sink as I stared at my own reflection. The skin under my eyes was puffy, almost purple. I tried to slow down the sudden, shallow rhythm of my breathing. How could I possibly be the one in the wrong? I was certain that blueberry muffins were his favorite. We'd had blueberry cake at our wedding too. It had this beautiful, pale, baby blue icing with fresh blueberries cascading down one side. I was sure of it. I made a mental note to dig out the photo album later and prove it to myself. I turned the taps on, letting the bathroom fill with steam as thoughts whirled around in my head. I squeezed my eyes shut as a sharp, pulsing headache pressed behind my temples. I shifted my focus to the sound of the rushing water, waiting for the pain to fade into a dull ache. When I opened my eyes, the water had nearly risen to the rim of the tub. I lurched forward and twisted the taps, not bothering to question how long I'd zoned out for. I lowered myself into the bath. The house was quiet, and the warm water offered some sense of comfort. My eyelids grew heavy, and I allowed them to close, focusing on my breath. In, out, in, out. I stayed like that for a while, before drifting into a dreamless sleep. A loud creak woke me up. I glanced over at the locked door. The thin strip of light beneath it dimmed suddenly. A shadow. Every muscle in my body went rigid as I stared at that narrow line. Someone was standing there, right on the other side of the door, not moving, not knocking, just there. I could feel it in the air, the way you can feel someone's presence even without seeing them. That unmistakable awareness of another body occupying the space just inches away from yours. Seconds dragged past, heavy and distorted. My heart pounded. Then, without warning, the shadow vanished. Erratic footsteps tore down the hallway outside, thundering away from the door. Too fast, too uneven, a chaotic scramble that sent a violent jolt through my entire body. I flinched so hard that the water sloshed around the tub. The sound stopped as abruptly as it had begun, leaving behind a suffocating silence that pressed in from all sides. Had that really just happened? Had I been dreaming? In a daze, I reached for a towel and dried myself off. In the bedroom, I put on my pajamas, grabbing Scrappy from the bed and pulling him close to my chest. I lingered in the doorway for a moment before forcing myself into the hall and down the stairs. When I reached the bottom and looked into the living room, I stopped. Everything was wrong. The sofa was pressed up against a different wall with a blanket I'd never seen before, folded neatly onto the back of it. The TV sat on the other side of the room. In fact, every piece of furniture was in a completely different place. I looked at the curtains. They used to be gray, but now they were blue. The candles on the side table were green, not orange. But most disturbingly of all, there on the mantelpiece was a photo from our wedding. Slowly, I edged towards it. "Babe?" Alfie appeared from the kitchen. I leant in, examining the picture. We were cutting the cake. Our plain, white wedding cake. I collapsed my knees. Alfie hurried across the room, his footsteps quick but careful. He crouched down beside me, lifting my chin with his finger. "Hey, what is it?" he asked, his voice low and soft. The kindness in it was too much. My chest tightened, and before I could stop myself, I began to cry. I buried my face in his chest, clutching his t-shirt. He wrapped his arms around me without hesitation, holding me close as I shook against him. "It's gonna be okay," he whispered. "I've got you." I took the next few days off work, and so did Alfie. I didn't ask him to, but he insisted. He held my hand as I made a call to the doctors, setting up an appointment for the following week. He brought me coffee, black, no sugar. He even rearranged the furniture just to put me at ease. "Huh, I like it better this way," he said, as he stood back and admired the room. I smiled. "Thank you," I said weakly. My head still throbbed and my eyes were still crusty from all the tears, but I felt okay. For the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. Alfie was right. I was going to be okay. We went to the appointment together. The doctor didn't look at me when he spoke. "Stress," he said, tapping something into the computer, "and exhaustion, very common." He printed the prescription and handed it to me. "These will help you sleep. Deep sleep. That's what you need." Alfie squeezed my hand with a reassuring smile. The first week of taking the tablets was bliss. I'd pop a pill and fall asleep within minutes. And it was a good sleep, too. Dreamless, like I was dead to the world. But nothing lasts forever, apparently, as sometime during the second week, I started feeling the side effects. I kept having these awful nightmares. In them, I'd wake up to find Alfie acting strangely. In one dream, he was completely undressed and hunched over, his mouth hanging open in a wide, unnatural smile that stretched the skin of his cheeks. In another, I rolled over in bed to find him staring at me, his eyes so wide I could see the whites all the way around their irises. Every time, I'd squeeze my eyes shut, willing the dream to end. Eventually, I'd fall back asleep and wake up sometime later in a cold sweat. I'd tell Alfie about these nightmares each morning. He'd listen, frowning, equally as disturbed by them as I was. He suggested that perhaps my brain was just adjusting to the medication, that eventually the dreams would stop. "I hope so," I said. "I don't know how much more of this I can take. They're not real, remember? Just dreams." I nodded. Just dreams. That night, I awoke suddenly. Heart thudding. I sat up. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and at the end of the hallway, something moved. He was there, on all fours. My husband was crouched at the end of the corridor, his spine arched strangely high. His head hung low between his shoulders. His eyes were wide, wild, and fixed on me. Alfie? His mouth moved. That same huge, silent smile. Then he moved. With a jerking of limbs, he scurried at an inhuman speed, palms and feet slapping the floor as he rushed towards the bedroom. I shrieked and threw myself back into bed, dragging the covers over my head. The mattress dipped as he climbed onto it. I squeezed my eyes shut and held my breath, waiting for fingers, teeth, anything. I woke up gasping for air. Morning light filled the room. The door was closed. Alfie's side of the bed cold and empty. That night, I didn't take a tablet. I kept this information to myself, not wanting to concern Alfie. I waited until he was in the bathroom, then slipped the tablet back into the bottle and returned it to the bedside drawer. When he came back to bed, I pretended to swallow it with a sip of water. I lay awake for hours, waiting for nightmares that never came. At some point, Alfie stirred next to me. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, not wanting him to question why I was awake. I felt a soft tap on my shoulder. Damn it, I thought. He's onto me. I kept my breathing slow and heavy, counting a few seconds before stirring to make my sleepy act seem more convincing. When I rolled over, his voice came from across the room. over here." When my eyes adjusted to the night, I saw him standing rigidly in the corner of the room. His eyes bulged from his face, as though something inside his skull was pushing them outward. Saliva dripped from his gaping mouth, which was stretched into a wide, panting grin. Something at his side shimmered in the light of the moon. A knife. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I watched in horror as he slowly raised the blade to his neck, dragging it gently across his throat in a silent, mocking promise. I shut my eyes tightly and turned away, burrowing beneath the duvet. My body locked in terror as I felt him crawl back into bed. He fell asleep not long after. I lay awake trembling, still unable to move. When the morning light finally crept through the curtains, and I heard him rise to start his day, I realized what I witnessed hadn't been a dream at all, because I had never fallen asleep. I made a plan to pack up my things and get the hell out of there. Whether I was imagining it or not, I couldn't risk staying in that house with him. He checked on me before leaving for work. As I lay in bed pretending to be sick, I mumbled some excuse about calling the office to tell them I wasn't coming in. He rested his hand on my forehead, and it took every ounce of my being not to recoil. "You do feel clammy," he said, feigning a look of concern. "Do you want me to stay with you?" My pulse raced. "No," I said, trying to sound casual. "No point. I'll be asleep for most of the day, I imagine." He nodded. "Okay, well, take it easy. I'll be back this evening to look after you. I love you." I waited for the sound of the front door to close behind him before springing out of bed. I just needed the essentials: my keys, my phone, my charger, my purse. I'd figure the rest out later. I shoved my things into a bag and hurried down the stairs. Shit, Scrappy. I ran back up to the bedroom. He wasn't on the bed. He wasn't under it. The wardrobe. I flung open the cupboard and rifled through its contents. He was buried beneath a pile of clothes that had fallen from their hangers. I went to grab them, but something else caught my eye. The glossy corner of a photograph peeked out from a small gap in the back panel of the wardrobe. A sickening thought crossed my mind. Pressing gently against it, the panel shifted with a soft, reluctant creak, revealing a narrow seam that hadn't been there before. Heart hammering, I pushed it further. It was a secret compartment. I took a closer look at the photo that had led me to this discovery. Vomit rose in my throat, my hand shaking as the picture fell from my gentle grasp. It was us on our wedding day, cutting our cake, our blueberry cake. Reluctantly, I leaned forward, peering into the compartment. Our photo albums were back there, but they looked different. I pulled one out and opened it. On every page, sticky notes clung to the photographs. Frantic arrows, underlines, suggestions. The notes didn't describe our memories, they dissected them, speculating how each image could be changed, reframed, and made to say something else entirely. There was a picture of us in the living room when we first moved in together. The furniture was exactly where I'd remembered it being. A cold, sharp dread settled in my chest as the pieces fell into place. Every conversation that had left me doubting myself, every time I caught him staring at me, every odd behavior, every time he'd convinced me I was the problem, all of it had been orchestrated by him, by Alfie, by the love of my life. The slow erosion of my sanity hadn't been accidental. For months and months, he sowed the seed of doubt in my mind, manipulating me, tricking me, fucking gaslighting me. All of it had been real, and all of it had been him. I sat there on the bedroom floor, a sea of emotions rushing through me. I felt everything all at once, and it was too much for me to deal with then and there. A voice in the back of my head told me it would take years of therapy to unpack this. I wouldn't be able to trust anyone ever again. Numbly, I retrieved my belongings and descended the stairs. The urgency I'd had only minutes ago had completely left my body. There wasn't room for it. I was halfway to the door when it opened towards me. Only me, I forgot my... We stopped. Our eyes met. With a look of concern I knew was pretend, Alfie examined my face, checking for tears, for anger, for anything that might tell him what he was walking into. I watched him do it. I watched the familiar softness appear, that careful attentiveness he wore when he thought something was wrong. Then he saw it. He knew that I knew. His concern vanished in an instant. It was as if a switch had been flipped behind his eyes. The warmth replaced with something icy and cold. "You figured it out," he said. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I simply looked back at the stranger in front of me. The love I once had for him, non-existent. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" He shrugged. "No," I said. "I need an answer. It's the least I deserve." His eyes were steady and clear, but eerily empty, as if nothing human stirred behind them. Because I could. And that was it. All that he'd done. All that he'd put me through. There was no reason, no master plan. It was all for sport. I pushed past him. Door closed behind me as I headed for my car. I sat with my hands on the wheel as I stared back at the house we'd shared together. It was nothing more to me now than a pile of bricks. While reversing out of the drive, unsure of where I was going, a realization hit me. I understood with a cold and final clarity that the most terrifying part wasn't what he'd done. It wasn't why he'd done it. It was how easily he would go on living now, untouched, unbothered, while I gathered the scattered pieces of my mind he had so carefully, deliberately broken. Just because he could. I've been a doctor for 30 years. I quit today. Written by Buddha the Great. At the very outset, I must apologize. I'm not very familiar with this platform, but I talked to my son, and after a good few hours of refusing to believe me, he thinks I should go on the internet with my story, as a warning. We didn't have all these computers when I was young, and words still travel just fine, but I guess the world has changed. Up until today, I was a doctor. A damn good one, if I say so myself. I have the biggest goddamn ENT practice in the next 5 states, and I'm proud of it. I was, at any rate. Now, I've just lit a cigarette on the final, smoldering chars of my degree. It's a whole load of bullshit anyways. No man who's seen anything like I've seen would have any faith left in those authoritative medical textbooks. It all began, you see, at exactly 10:30, when the private line at my upscale Sector V clinic began ringing. If I'd just been a little luckier and a little less stupid, I would have ignored it, like on any other day. I have strict principles. I don't take appointments after 9, and I don't see patients after 11. It's how I kept my marriage intact. You didn't disrespect my clock. If it was urgent, too bad. If it were an emergency, find someone else. Everyone who worked with me knew that. I was a goddamn super specialist. I was not going to run around on midnight calls like some junior resident. That's why my secretary ignored the line the first time, and the second, and the third, even though the ringing somehow grew louder each time. Then, just as I was planning to call it a night, my chamber intercom clicked and turned green. The line had been patched through. "Ranjana!" I barked through the door to my chamber. "I've told you not to. I didn't. She appeared at the door, nervously tugging at her skirt, eyes wide. It didn't even ring this time. I don't know how it got routed to you. You must have hit the wrong button. Even as I said it, I knew it was unlikely. Ranjana had been with me for 8 years. She didn't make mistakes, let alone stupid ones. Well, since it's already here, I moved to press the button to receive the call, but before I could, the speaker crackled to life on its own accord. Dr. Sharma, can you hear me? The voice was staticky, flickering in and out, like we were not over a landline, but on a satellite phone in the middle of a rainstorm. There was so little fidelity that I could hardly tell what the person on the other end sounded like. Yes, hello, I said. The second hello a little louder, hoping to cut through whatever strange interference was plaguing the line. I didn't even know why I was trying so hard to break my own rule. I suppose after even all these years, I am a professional first. All right, we're through. They were talking to someone on their end. Now that the line had cleared up slightly, I could tell it was a man. Dr. Sharma, I hope I'm not bothering you too much, but we have someone we would like to get checked out as soon as possible. I sighed. As expected. Look, mister. He didn't volunteer his name. I don't take appointments at this hour. If you need to come in, call us in the morning, and my secretary will give you a date and a time. I must warn you, we have a backlog. This is an emergency, doctor. It positively cannot wait. Then you should have set an appointment earlier. Call my office tomorrow, please. Good night. I moved to cut the line. It's very urgent. Are you sure I cannot persuade you? The voice on the other end was polite, even deferential, but there was a hint of steel behind it that stayed my hand. What kind of urgency? I said, despite myself. It's a close friend of mine, you see. Nothing life-threatening, but he seems to have completely lost his voice. Perfectly all right otherwise, but he's completely mute. Mute? I asked, some forgotten curiosity rising within me. Do you mean his voice is broken? Hoarse? No, doctor. There was a sting of triumph in his tune. He's completely silent. Not a peep. As if he didn't have a mouth at all. And nothing else wrong with him? Nothing. Healthy as a horse. Then I see no reason he shouldn't be able to wait until morning. Ordinarily, you would be right, but there are urgent events he has to attend to that require him to be able to speak. We need him seen tonight, and there's no better doctor in the city than you. I rubbed my forehead, raising a quizzical brow at Ranjana. She shrugged helplessly. I had never broken my rule. On the other hand, the case was, money's no object, if that's your concern. His tone was light and breezy, almost dismissive, as if he couldn't believe that was even in question. Is that so? What's your consultation fee, Dr. Sharma? I opened my mouth to answer, but he cut me off. It doesn't matter. All you need to know is it's more money than you'll see in your life for seeing a walk-in patient at a clinic. Significantly more. Despite myself, I bristled. How cheap did he think I was? It has 6 zeros, he added helpfully, as if reading my mind. All of that for one single consultation. It shouldn't take a skilled professional like you more than 15 minutes. What do you say? Sir, Ranjana whispered, her tone some mix of warning and trepidation. I silenced her with a knowing look. She wasn't wrong. Something in my gut told me I was being paid to see something no one else would. But I told myself it didn't matter. Fuck curiosity. Curiosity is for students. I was a professional. I just had to diagnose a mute man and go home with enough money to build a second house in Goa. Your friend must be really desperate, I said, trying not to blurt out my shock. We need this solved with minimum delay. Off the books. Are you in or are you out, doctor? Looking back, That is the moment any reasonable man should have walked away. No one gives that much away for, essentially, peanuts. If they are usually buying significantly more than what you think you're selling. Instead, I looked at the clock. 10. I still had an hour before I had to get home, technically, before my wife started crying. How long could it take? Fine, I said tersely. When can your friend come in? I could almost hear the smile in his voice. Oh, don't worry about it, Dr. Sharma. My friends are already there. Right on cue, I heard the clinic door swing open. The line clicked and went dead on my desk. Ranjana read my glance immediately, rushing out to greet them. There was the sound of heavy boots against the floor. 3 or 4 of them, by my guess. But there was something else right alongside them. A chill that settled into the room as the door swung closed, prickling up my spine. Out of habit, more than anything else, I checked the air conditioning. Still at the usual settings. I rose from my seat. An inexplicable, heavy sense of foreboding coiling around my heart, telling me I was making a mistake, telling me to send them away. I ignored them. The money was too good. The fucking money. The first one that caught my eye was the leader of the pack, a man with brown, metallic complexion, hair slicked back expertly into a part my own grandmother would approve of. May she rest in peace. His suit looked remarkably expensive, the kind that would burn holes even in my pockets, which I supposed explained the willingness to pay. Even as he approached me, his mouth splitting into a perfectly rehearsed smile, the air in the room began to grow pungent with ozone, like the calm before a thunderclap. Flanking him on either side, a few steps behind, were 2 others, one male and one female. Unlike their companion, they were dressed almost too casually. Ratty. Sagging t-shirts and faded jeans. Their faces were uncovered, but every time I tried to focus on them, my eyes would instantly slide off and onto something else, like slipping on black ice. Even what few details I could have glimpsed dissolved almost as soon as they entered my mind. All I could comprehend was an ever-shifting mirage, an unsolvable puzzle where their visage should be. Standing between them was another man, a foreign tourist by the look of it. He was wearing a faded and stained sky blue shirt, a silver cross glittering darkly on his collar. His dirty blonde beard was long and unkempt, matched by the mop on his head. Though he was able to stand by himself, his forehead was slick with sweat, his eyes half-lidded as he tried not to nod off. Dr. Sharma, the man in the suit, approached first, wearing a well-rehearsed polite expression as he extended his hand. Thank you so much for seeing us at such short notice. I want you to know we are all very grateful. You must be. We are the associates your caller mentioned, yes. I took his hand. I thought he said you were friends, mister. Elias. His grin did not waver, his grip firm as he shook. You can call me Elias, and yes, he does like to think of us all as friends, doesn't he? But just between you and me, I prefer to keep it a little bit more professional. I see. Well, no use getting involved in that. Instead, I crossed over to the man they had dragged in. I assume this is your patient? What gave it away? Elias chuckled at his own joke, adjusting his suit. Well, where do you want him, Doc? We can wait outside or take a walk, or if that's what you want. After escorting him all the way here, they were just fine with leaving me alone with their friend. Nevertheless, working would be easier without 3 people breathing down my neck and asking questions. You can step outside if you want, I said diplomatically, but I would appreciate it if we had the room. Understood. Elias nodded. People, let's give the doctor his space. I'm stepping outside. Gotta smoke, the man said. As an ENT specialist, I hated smoking. As a chain smoker myself, I sympathized perfectly. Besides, I had something else to worry about. He's just spoken. No doubt about it. However, even though the sound passed through my ears and I remembered every word he had said, I already had no recollection of what he sounded like. Not a single detail. Not a pitch, not a cadence, not even the language. There was a gaping void in my memory where his voice should have been. "You sure you can handle this, Doc?" Elias asked. His eyes slightly narrowed as he read my expression. "You look a little flustered. Long day?" "I'm fine," I said quickly, reflexively, admitting fatigue was a bad idea, commercially and legally in my profession. "I can take him from here." "Can I go?" the man asked again, urgently. "Go ahead." Elias gave me another smile. "We'll be outside, Dr. Sharma, just in case you need anything." Then he walked over to the patient, patting his cheek like an affectionate father. "Don't worry, kiddo. He's the best doctor for the next 5 states. If anyone can fix you up, it's him." A few seconds later, we were alone. Wordlessly, I gestured to my patient to take a seat. "What's your name?" It was more for politeness' sake than anything else, though it would be nice to know if the muteness was merely psychological. No answer. Predictable. "How long have you been in India? You don't look local. Did you come here on holiday?" The questions were more to fill the silence than anything else as I rifled among my other tools. I caught Ranjana's eye through the door. She had taken her seat at her desk. Whatever else, she was ever the professional. Something unspoken passed between us. A language cultivated over the years. Keep the equipment running, just in case. They were paying good money. Obscene money. The implication of that was clear. I had to find an answer, no matter what. Now that we were alone, I was beginning to notice more details about him. His breaths were coming short and shallow, chest heaving like a pigeon's, though he didn't look very distressed by it. His blinking was out of sync, the left eye a few moments late to blink. And the smell. I had a faint memory of it from my medical school days. A smell I found so disconcerting that it was the single most important factor for me to pick medicine over surgery. Old, stale blood. I frowned, mind racing to find explanations, even as my hands gathered the necessary equipment. The asynchronous blinking, shortness of breath, vasovagal response, nervous issues? Maybe he had tried to take some shoddy drugs at some obscure village music festival? Common enough around here. And the tourists always pass through Bengal on their way back. The dealers knew this, but the smell. A sharp rap on the window. Both of us jumped to the sound. The man's eyes followed mine. A jet black crow was perched on the windowsill outside, head turned to the side to look straight into the room. Its eyes were big, too big for any bird of its kind I had seen. Pupils round and aware. Intelligence glinted behind them, almost as if it had been waiting for me to look. It deliberately wrapped its beak on the window again, and then again. I could not understand what it wanted. To come in? A clatter drew my attention back to my patient. His resigned demeanor had been replaced with a strange, unnatural excitement. His eyes were wide as he stared at the bird, breath coming ragged and fast as he shuffled to get as far away from the window as he could without getting up. The fear in his eyes was raw. Animal. Whatever that thing was, he knew it. It knew him. I looked back at it. It met my gaze head on, its baleful eye growing and growing and growing until it swallowed the whole room. I was a speck of dust before its massive pupil, its glare boring into me. Cold waves ran through my body. It was scanning, thinking, questioning, and I did not know how to answer it. Seconds stretched into hours. My muscles petrified before the intensity of this little bird. And then, before I knew it, the moment passed. It cawed once, and as any other bird would, spread its wings and disappeared into the darkness outside. "Doctor?" The voice pulled me back to the door. where Elias's head was sticking through the crack. "Everything all right?" We heard a little commotion. The bird. The bird? Elias did not sound incredulous. Rather, he sounded a little irritated, like he had just been informed of the arrival of an unwelcome guest. "Is this bird still there?" "No." I caught myself before I could get more upset. "Well, never mind. It's all right. We were just a little startled. I will begin with the examination now." Elias gave me a polite smile. "Of course, Dr. Sharma. Once again, if you need anything." He left the implication hanging, closing the door behind him. The man was still wide-eyed, craning his neck to look behind me, confirming if he were truly alone. I understood the feeling, but I could not have him fidgeting for the rest of the inspection. "It's gone, sir. Please, try to sit still." I raised the inspection table to get the appropriate height. "I'm going to make a physical examination of your throat now, just to see if there is any visible problem. Is that all right?" He hesitated for a second, and then nodded. "Okay, good." I snapped on my gloves with practical ease. I first started outside, palpitating his neck. There was no obvious inflammation or irregularity, no swelling, no bumps, no excessive throbbing or heat. In fact, there was little heat at all. His skin was cold, like touching a sheet of metal left in snow overnight. Even the thin sheen of sweat was almost ice cold, seeping through the gloves and numbing my fingers. This cold and still sweating. He did not look uncomfortable, but even so. The man on the phone had said he was healthy as a horse. Either he had been grossly misinformed, or he had been lying to my face. That was expected to a certain degree, but this... I shook my head, better to concentrate on what I could. There did not seem to be any external evidence of inflammation, tumors, or infections. Nothing that was serious enough to be noticed through the skin. At any rate, I need to have a direct look to rule it out fully. "Open your mouth, please, sir, as wide as you can go." I grabbed a torch and a tongue depressor from my tray, clearing a visible path. Despite the harsh light, his pupils remained unmoving, refusing to contract even though he was clearly uncomfortable with the brightness. "You can close your eyes," I whispered, concentrating on his throat. He needed more than an ENT specialist to see him. I was half tempted to call up a few of my friends for a referral, but I had been asked for discretion. Whether that extended to other medical professionals, I did not know. And I did not want to risk finding out the hard way. When people were willing to pay that much, it wasn't just about privacy. Losing the money was the least of your concerns. Disobeying instructions could land you in a ditch, or worse. Even under direct inspection, his throat looked perfect. Too perfect. Not a single blemish, aberration, or benign growth. Not even minute scarring from wear. It was immaculate. It looked like my patient had walked straight out of the ideal diagram in my anatomy textbook. No real person's body looked like that. It was as if he had never spoken, caught a cold, or even coughed too hard in his entire life. How old was he? Above 20 at least. That was impossible. I flicked off the torch, trying to keep my confusion from my voice. "You can't talk? At all?" The man shook his head. "What about sounds? Can you sigh, cough, shout?" The man blinked. He hadn't tried yet. "Why don't you go ahead and try to cough for me then?" I hoped he knew what coughing was, given the pristine condition of his throat. He nodded and coughed lightly. It sounded normal. No gurgling or scratchiness. That ruled out mucus buildup, though I hadn't seen any in the first place. He coughed again. A little harder this time. "It's okay, sir. You can stop now," I said, reaching for my next instrument. He coughed again, doubling over this time. "Sir?" His coughs grew in intensity until he was shaking and thrashing in place, each retching cough racking his whole body with spasms. "Ranjana," I called out, straightening him up. "Water, now." As he coughed, something black and vicious began to pour out of his mouth, bubbling with intermittent spit and mucus. It came without relief, first in nasty globbles and then in a thick stream, staining his shirt and splattering it onto the floor. The smell of blood lingering around him intensified until I was forced to cover my face with my sleeve to stop myself from gagging. This close, it was joined by others. The raw smell of overburnt incense, the pungent odor of burning hair, and sickening mildew. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. He gasped, taking long, shaky breaths, looking at the tar-like substance now covering the floor in his clothes. "It's all right. Happens more often than you know." I lied. "We'll get it cleaned up." He nodded slightly, clearly not believing me. "Well," I had to press on, if only to finish up in time and get back home. "Why don't you drink that water, and then I'll take a direct look at your larynx." Ranjana, true to her usual punctuality, arrived within a few seconds. Face fixed in studied disinterest, she lowered the tray with a glass of water before my patient. He drank it gratefully, needy gulps, eyes darting around in some mixture of shame and feet. We stepped outside, giving him his privacy as best we could. "What's that mess, sir?" she whispered under her breath. It all came out of him. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms and trying to study him without glaring. "That much?" She looked, wide-eyed at the floor. "Is it blood?" No, it wasn't. That smell didn't come from the sludge. It was coming straight from him, oozing from every pore. "Then what is it?" "I have no idea." She glanced at me, surprised. It was the first and now probably last time she had heard me admit I did not know something. "We should get a sample of it. It's contaminated now, but it'll have to do. This needs to go back to a lab as soon as possible," I said, falling back into the safety of professionalism. "I think we'll need to see this patient a few more times." She nodded. "Yes, sir." Even as I looked at it, the thick, gelatinous globules wriggled around the floor, refusing to stay still, as if they were trying to crawl away, as if they were alive. Yes, I had never seen something like this before, and the gods help me, I never wanted to see it again. The man finished his water, looking around for a place to set the glass down. Ranjana took it from him, flashing a measured smile of hospitality. "Are you ready to continue?" I asked, trying to make my voice as gentle as I could. "We can take a few minutes." He shook his head. "Very well." I crossed back over to the tray, keeping up the appearance of control. "Now, we're going to take a direct look at your larynx, your voice box, that is." I held up my laryngoscope, letting him take a look at it as I got it hooked up to my monitor. Normally, I didn't bother, but the more upper-class clients liked the show, the illusion that they knew what was going on. "I'm going to insert this through your nostril and down your throat. You may feel a little uncomfortable, but it will pass. It has a camera that allows me to take a direct look at your vocal folds, see if there is anything physical going on." When he didn't protest, I fell back into practice procedural ritualism, administering a light tropical anesthetic before guiding the tube in through his nose. He made a half-hearted attempt to sneeze, but stayed otherwise still as I watched the video feed. His nostrils looked normal, with no inflammation or mucus present to signal an infection. In less than a minute, I was through, reflexes and experience taking over as I deftly entered the throat and proceeded downwards towards my destination. The pharynx passes by, looking as pristine and perfect as it had visually. Just a little more, and I would have the vocal folds in sight. As I rounded the last fold, a crackling sound sent ripples of distortion through the monitor feed. The sound grew, like miniature lightning inside the machine. Then the feed cut out, replaced by darkness. I frowned. This machine wasn't anywhere close to giving out like this. It was less than a year old. No, the monitor hadn't turned off. It was still powered, responsive. The laryngoscope was transmitting its feed just fine. It was merely looking at nothing. Perhaps just the torch I'd given out? Then the darkness began to shift. Vague outlines melting out from the black void. Shifting. Moving. The vocal folds? No, that looked nothing like a larynx. Even from what little I could see. I fiddled with the controls, trying to get the torch working again. Unfortunately, it did. The light flicked on, bathing the patient's throat once more. Right before the camera, a black, bulbous mass writhed, tentacle-like projections wrapped tightly around the tissue. It had no features whatsoever, except for the occasional tar-like bubbling sending ripples across its undulating surface. No features except a mouth, a wide grin, human-like teeth jutting straight into the camera. Its eyeless stare began climbing, back up the fiber optic. Terrible instinct crawled on my skin like a warning. It breached the monitor, somehow looking through something that could not look. It was looking. It was looking at me. With a cry of surprise, I let go of the laryngoscope, staggering back, almost tipping over my chair in the process. It almost slipped out, dragging roughly across the soft tissues of the throat and nose before the man caught its heavy end with a strangled grunt of pain. I panted, skin flushing with heat and adrenaline. The AC was still humming, but I was sweating like the room had turned tropical. My skin prickled. My shirt clung to my back. I stared wide-eyed at the monitor. The feed had actually cut out this time, only to flick back on a few moments later. The camera was looking straight at the man's larynx. A normal larynx. Except that it was too perfect. Too clean. Like everything else in there. Like something was disguising itself with the healthiest image it knew. "Doctor?" I heard Elias's voice from outside. "I'm fine," I called back, staring at the image. "We're fine." No. Not a single trace remained of anything out of the ordinary. I wiped the sweat off my face, rubbing my eyes. Was it fatigue? Had I been sleeping too little after all? Maybe binging those shows every night wasn't a good idea after all, no matter what my wife said. I fixed my patient with the firmest stare I could. "What exactly happened to you? Tell me. Leave no detail out." He looked at me helplessly. I grabbed my pad and a pen from the desk. "Right, I need your history. I can't make a diagnosis without it." He nodded, taking the pen from me. I flipped the pad to a blank page and held it out. He touched the pen to it and scratched the first line. Then the pen clattered from his shaking grip, followed shortly by the pad as they landed in the black mess on the floor. He cried out in pain, cradling his hand as the fingers shook and contorted, bending backwards until I was afraid they would tear themselves out of their sockets. If he hadn't been so young and mostly fine up until now, I would have begged him, with palsy on the spot. Something nervous then. It had to be. It had to be something else, anything else, other than what I had seen. Never mind then, there's one last test we have to do. I retrieved the appropriate machine from the tangle in the corner. I would have to have a word with the cleaner about organizing that. An electromyography. He gave me a quizzical look. Some things never change. It will let me measure electrical activity in your muscles. I quickly withdrew the laryngoscope, wheeling it away with perhaps a little more urgency than I had to. "I have a suspicion that your problem is related to nerves, since I can see nothing physically wrong." Well, that was a lie. Your vocal folds may not have been getting the correct signals from your brain, or any signals at all. That might be why you can make sounds, but no complex speech. I held up a hand to forestall the next question on an impulse. "It's minimally invasive, don't worry." It wasn't about the money, not anymore. I needed to know I was sane. I showed him the electrodes. I just need to insert these into your throat externally. He sighed, his expression resigned. He did not believe I could help him. To tell the truth, I wasn't sure either. But he made no moves to refuse, so I continued. This time, I did not administer any anesthetic. I needed the electrical activity to be as clean as possible, just in case. As soon as the monitor flicked on, my questions were both answered and increased. The electromyogram was dead. Completely dead. Not a hint of electrical activity present anywhere. It was never completely dead. That would mean... Can you try to speak, I asked, just to make sure. Humor me. He strained. Still no activity on the display. I sighed, moving to switch it off. Weird or not, I had my answer. Then the graph moved. Within seconds, when there was nothing before, there was now frantic activity. Lines and spikes going everywhere and nowhere, erratic and impossible. Nerves could not carry signals like this. Every hint of medical knowledge I had went against it. And yet, it was happening. A miniature thundercloud was raging inside my patient's throat, painting the monitor with hints of its power. The lights in the clinic flickered, as if the electricity was overwhelming the circuitry, traveling back through the computer and into the room around me. I rose from my chair, opening my mouth to say something. With one final blinding flash, every light in the room detonated, sending sprays of glass everywhere. I ducked, covering my head with my arms as small shards pattered against my clothes. In an instant, we were cast into blinding darkness. The ghostly glow of the electromyogram, the only source of any illumination. Someone banged on the door, trying to open it. It did not budge. In the darkness, I felt something moving along it. Something heavy, holding it in place with its bulk. The monitor continued flickering, casting dancing shadows that shrouded more than they revealed. I looked at it again, despite every instinct screaming not to. That's not, I murmured. That's not how it works. Neural impulses don't transmit. The spikes were converging, melting into each other, forming something coherent, forming words, sprawled across the screen with impossible physics. The price is paid. Leave it alone. He is mine. I wanted to look away. Everything in me screamed not to. My legs burned to run, but I stared, transfixed, like a lab rat watching its own autopsy. Then the letters were melting, crashing into each other, twisting and rolling, stretching into a smile, a ghostly, terrible smile. Drawn in impulses. A sharp crack split the air. It came from my patient. Something was dragging its way out of his mouth, jaw breaking out of its hinges as it was stretched impossibly wide. His eyes lolled back into the back of his skull, the cornea glowing with an eerie light as his tormentor revealed himself. Its long, serpentine body uncoiled, black and slippery, growing in girth every second as it dragged itself along the floor, along the walls, along the ceiling, surrounding, suffocating, drawing ever closer. Then it was facing me. The head of the beast smiled, its body pulsing everywhere around me. I was in a room made of it, any hint of my clinic long since gone. Its mouth split into a grin. Then it opened and the thing spoke. Its voice was deep, gravelly, sending tremors of weakness through my legs. You are wasting your time, Doctor. He has sinned, and he has atoned. There is nothing for you to heal. It is late. Go home. Be with your family. The threat was clear. Before it decided I couldn't. With a crash, the door burst open, quicker than I could blink. The monster withdrew, like a rubber band snapping back into place as it crawled back into its host. His jaw snapped back into place just as torchlight from the doorway blinded me. Elias and his companions shone their torches into the room, flickering from me to the patient and then back again. Beyond them, the lights of the waiting area glowed with their usual pleasant dim light. "Are you all right, sir? Sir?" Ranjana pushed past them, stepping gingerly over the glass on the ground as she hurried to me. "What the hell happened here?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My voice betrayed me as I slumped into the nearest chair, shying away from the probing lights of the torches. "Dr. Sharma?" Elias frowned. "Are you injured?" I managed to shake my head. "And your patient?" I looked up as the torch flickered on his face. He did not look afraid. No. We were beyond that. He was numb, catatonic, eyes as wide as they could go as he stared out into nothing, barely breathing, but he was alive. Elias hummed in approval. Well, I said slowly. "What's your diagnosis, Dr. Sharma? Or did you forget what we were here for?" I buried my face in my hands. "After everything that just happened, that is your first question?" "Well, you look fine," the woman said, crossing her arms. "Of course." I took a shaky breath. There's something inside of him. I can't solve this. It threatened me. It came out of his mouth and it threatened me. It knew me. It knew everything. It said he had sinned and he had to be atoned. It was God's. It was, I looked up, no longer able to hide my vitriol. There's a monster. A monster. That's my diagnosis, sir. Your patient, or is, a monster. Ranjana's expression was openly terrified now, even as she used her handkerchief to wipe the perspiration from my brow as well as she could. "A monster," Elias repeated, his expression neutral. "A monster," I snapped, no longer caring. I didn't want the money. I didn't even know what I wanted. This wasn't science or medicine. It was mythology. It was madness. I just needed to get out of there. "Well, that makes sense." "What?" I jolted, unable to keep my surprise from my voice. Elias sighed, flashing me another one of his easy smiles. In the light from his torch, he looked ghostly, foreboding. "I'm afraid we haven't been entirely truthful with you, Dr. Sharma." Disappointment. It was more of a second opinion. We needed to be sure, absolutely sure, that it wasn't simply medical. We needed you to make sure. You knew? "You've had an experience with the pathology, yes," he said evasively. "And now we know that the entity you saw is to blame. Thanks to you. You put my life in danger without telling me anything, so you could make sure," I said, bile and anger rising together up my throat with every recollection of that smiling electromyogram. "Well, you are a smart man, Dr. Sharma. Surely you didn't think we would be paying you that much simply to stick a camera in someone's nose," Elias chuckled. "Besides, we were reasonably sure, that it would not harm you. Not unless you kept pushing. You wisely did not." I opened my mouth and closed it again. "Well, our business here is concluded, Dr. Sharma, and look at that." Elias pointed a finger at the clock in the lobby. "Right on schedule. 11 on the dot." The bastard knew. He knew when I went home. They had been watching me, scouting me. "Your wife," Elias interrupted, his grin growing a little sharper, "would be distraught if you tarried any further, doctor, as would be your beautiful children. and there is little that causes more delay in getting home than asking the wrong questions. Some of those delays could even be permanent. I glared at him, but my mouth snapped shut. I believed him. Leave your office unlocked and the key on your desk. He resumed with his easygoing tone. Our cleanup crew will be along shortly. Nothing leaves this room, doctor. Not material and not words, understood? I nodded. Then we have no quarrel. Elias bowed to me before turning to his soldiers. Pick our preacher up, will you? We're leaving. As his men slid into motion, the lights flickered again and went out. For a second or two, we were in absolute darkness. When they came back on, the men were gone, as was my patient. It was as if we had been alone all this time, except for the mess they made of my clinic. The only lingering sign of their existence was a nondescript black briefcase, placed deliberately on Ranjana's desk. Sir, she whispered. This close, I could feel her shaking in fear. Go home, Ranjana, I breathed, struggling to my feet. The after effects of adrenaline making my breathing choppy. My heart thundered like a struggling petrol engine in my chest. I was getting old. Too old for this. I saw that now. All at once. Sir, I go home, I repeated. Go home and go to sleep. Forget this ever happened, and for the God's sake, tell no one. Without waiting for her to comply, I stumbled over to the briefcase, marshaling every ounce of willpower to prevent my legs from collapsing like jelly. The locks were keyed to 000, unlocked. The clasps snapped open as soon as I touched them. Beneath the smooth lid were neatly tied bundles of rupee notes, 2,000 each, stacked to fill the entire space inside. I could estimate at a glance. There was enough to fulfill the promise, maybe more. On top of the pile, there was a business card, blank except for a phrase in neat handwriting. Do not pursue this. After that, it was all blur. The next thing I knew, I was closing my car door, walking up the stairs to my house. I dreamt up some answers for my wife somewhere along the way, though it was difficult to explain the briefcase in my white-knuckled grip. Even now, I can see it. In the corner. Waiting. Trust me, I'm going to use the money. I'm not that stupid. But as for the rest of it, I'm done. Done believing in the lies we stretch over the mouth of the world and call truth because it's convenient. Everything we think we know is a veil. I understand that today. And what's on the other side? I don't care to know. I don't want to know. But I do know this. I'm going to burn every medical textbook I have tonight. Maybe have a little bonfire too while I'm at it. If you're a doctor, I encourage you to do the same. Why? Because that thing I saw in the room is the truth. The only truth of our world. Everything else? Lies. Elegant lies. Well-dressed lies. Authoritative lies. But lies. It's all lies. She Thinks She's People. Written by Saturdead. Back in the summer of 2008, my buddy Jackson and I were 10 years old. While our parents worried about a looming recession, we were keeping busy with the hype of the new Batman movie. We were a couple of weeks away from another school year, and we were making the best of it. We spent most of our days outdoors. It felt better than sitting inside and enduring the endless drone of political debates or hearing our parents moan about making ends meet. Jackson and I both had a Nintendo DS, and we played them religiously. You could find us tucked away in every corner of downtown Hilltop, trading Pokemon and turning in nickel cans for cheap gas station snacks. I think I learned the importance of washing my hands solely from trying to play games with sticky, slushy fingers. It was a good time. Sometimes we'd head down to the river to scare the Girl Scouts before they got back to their campground. We'd hide in the bushes and pretend to be wild animals. We were coming back from a visit to the campground. There were no scouts there, so we just wandered around and checked out the equipment they left behind. We'd already checked the tool shed, but there wasn't anything fun to mess with. Instead, we marveled over a hairpin that we found. This small, pink, plastic thing with a blue sunflower on it. "I bet this is Melody's," Jackson mumbled. "I think there's a blonde hair on it." "Nah, her hair's too short. It's probably Lynn's." "No, Lynn's is curled. This one's straight. Want to bet?" He thought about it and offered me a hand. "If it's Melody's, you can't use your Luxray anymore. If it's Lynn's, I can't use my Garchomp. Deal." We shook on it. We'd probably forgot all about it in a couple of days, but it gave us something to do. And besides, that Garchomp had been kicking my ass all summer long. We followed the river, making our way back home. We were about halfway there when we heard something up ahead. There was this bright yipping noise, like puppies. Looking down the river, we could spot what looked like 6 coyotes crossing the stream up ahead. 1 larger, 5 small. The larger one was pacing nervously, stepping back and forth, crying and howling at one of the smaller ones. They had all crossed the river except for one. One of them sat on a stone, staring straight ahead. It wasn't nervous or crying or anything. It just sat there. Jackson pointed at them and held his finger up, asking me to be quiet. I nodded. We stepped a little closer, and despite our best intentions, we spooked them. The larger coyote sped off with all the little ones bouncing after it under the underbrush, but one of them was left behind, and it didn't seem to care. "You think it's sick?" I whispered. "Maybe it's dead. It's not moving." "No, look, it's blinking." It was blinking. It sat there, looking straight ahead. It almost looked sleepy, like it didn't have a care in the world. We waited for a couple of minutes to see if the mother would come back, but she never did. I was curious. We got close enough that we could poke it with a stick if we wanted to, but we didn't. It was a coyote pup looking right at us, and it wasn't moving. It looked fine though. Bright eyes, steady breathing, healthy fur. It locked its yellow eyes on me, like it was trying to make sense of what kind of strange dog I was supposed to be. Then it stood up. It balanced on its hind legs. "Jesus, that's cute," Jackson beamed. "Why is it standing up?" "Who cares? It's cute." "But they don't do that. They don't stand up." Jackson nodded, but couldn't stop smiling. "Maybe she thinks she's people." He took the pink hairpin with the blue sunflower and removed his shoes. Step by step, he made his way into the river. He carefully reached out and attached the hairpin to the coyote's perked ear. "Look," Jackson smiled. "She's the prettiest girl in the world." That made the coyote react. She panted eagerly and dropped down on all fours, spinning in a circle and making little noises at us. We spent all day with that pup. At first, we were looking for her mother, but we realized she wasn't coming back. That and this little thing was following us around. We got her some snacks, talked to her, tried to make her do tricks, all of it. Neither me nor Jackson had any pets of our own, so this was like finding a free dog. We both knew there'd be no way we could bring it home. Not only was it not a dog, but our parents were in a bad spot. I didn't know it at the time, but my mom had lost her job, and they were contemplating a move. Jackson's parents were trying to figure out how to keep their hardware store open. You couldn't bring a dog into that kind of environment. We settled for the next best thing. We took all these snacks we'd saved up and gave her all of it. We thought about getting her some dog food, but she really seemed to enjoy people food. She followed us around all day, sometimes getting up on her hind legs, as if trying to copy us. It was so funny watching her trying to balance and watching that little tail bob as she tripped on her feet. Sometimes, as we walked, we could hear a little yip as she stumbled over something. Jackson decided to make it easy for her and carry her around. She seemed to like that. She was small enough to sleep in the pouch of his hoodie. We found a spot for her behind a dumpster outside the abandoned sporting goods store. We stuffed Jackson's hoodie in my backpack, making a little nest. Before we left for the day, I bent down and whispered, "We'll be back first thing in the morning, all right?" The coyote yelped at me and tilted its head. "I know, but we'll be right back." It yelped again. I paused, looking into those yellow eyes. The coyote did nothing. I looked a little closer, speaking in a lower voice. "Do you understand me?" The coyote tilted its head. It didn't respond, but bobbed its head and wagged its tail. Whether it understood me or not, it was clear this thing enjoyed our company. Jackson said his goodbyes and scratched her behind the ear. "Who's the prettiest girl?" he cooed. "You are. Yes, you are." The coyote almost danced around the backpack as it jumped and rolled, making little puppy noises. For the next few days, that coyote pup was our world. We took her everywhere, and we didn't need a leash or anything. She would follow us around, shared our snacks, and cuddled up next to us as we played our games and talked the summer day away. Jackson wanted to call her Megan, as in Megan Fox, but I vetoed it. We ended up calling her Jessica. I had a bit of a crush on Jessica Biel back then, so if our pup was to be named after the prettiest girl I knew, well, that was it. It worked for Jackson too. He had a thing for Jessica Alba, so Jessica it was. Little Jessie Pup. We forgot all about the hairpin in our bet, but Jessie Pup still had it bobbing from her ear. She didn't make the slightest attempt to remove it. She really was a little lady. She would bite down her nails until they were neat and tidy, and she would get all bitter and gloomy whenever you ruffled her fur the wrong way. She was a prima donna, and we spoiled her plenty. They say dogs and coyotes are cleverer than we give them credit for, so I didn't know what to think of her. Jessie did a lot of things I didn't expect an animal to be able to do. She picked up tricks almost immediately, like spin or sit. It's like she understood the word rather than the action itself. We even tried to teach her to speak. Jackson was leaning against a chain-linked fence, dangling a piece of beef jerky at her. "Go on," he said. "Speak." Jessie got up on her hind legs and looked up at the jerky. She was salivating and showing all her teeth, something she did whenever she saw a tasty treat. Then she turned her attention straight forward, to Jackson. Her tongue retracted into her mouth as her paws lowered. Her legs didn't shake anymore when she stood up. She was getting good at it. Really good. When she finally made a noise, it was less of a bark and more like a hacking cough. At first, I thought she was choking on something, but Jackson was still holding the treat. Instead, she repeated the sound a couple of times until it sounded to sound less like a cough and more like a groan. "You hear that?" Jackson said. "She's just coughing." No, listen." I leaned down to get her on eye level. Jessie Pup turned to me, her body never once wobbling despite balancing on her hind legs. She stared at me with those big yellow eyes. "Go on, Jessie," I said. "Speak." She opened her mouth and turned a little, as if to align her throat at the right angle. Then she let out a breath and a huff, like she was clearing her throat. And I swear to God, it sounded like hello. Jackson was ecstatic about this development. He would try to get her to say all kinds of things, like our names, or our town, or the name of the streets. Half the time, she could do it pretty well. You could kind of hear what she was saying if you really listened for it, but to a random bystander, it would have just sounded like phlegm and groaning. But to two 10-year-olds, it was magical. Jessie, the magic pup. We got her a better place to sleep. We propped up a big old gym bag and remade a hub cap into a water dish. We made sure she was comfortable. and Jackson stole a decorative pillow from the couch in his living room. It was hard and embroidered, but Jessie loved it. She was always at her best whenever we treated her like one in the gang, rather than a pet. But nothing made her happier than having Jackson call her the prettiest girl in the world. That was, by far, her favorite thing. We noticed over the coming days that Jessie was getting a bit too adventurous. She would stray from her nest and almost walk into traffic, so we had to do something to keep her safe. She was growing fast, and with her new gym bag nest, we could move her around whenever there was too much noise or traffic. We ended up going back to the Girl Scout camp, so they packed up for the summer. There was that tool shed with a broken wood panel that you could crawl under, so we could make it like Jessie's own little house. We would sneak out leftovers from our house. Jackson did this thing where he would say I loved his mom's cooking so much that he'd like to bring me some. It always worked. I would say the same to my mom. We did this every now and then so we could bring Jessie an extra portion. Jessie did this thing where she would slap her paw straight into the food and scoop it up, like she was trying to use her paws to eat. She seemed frustrated when they didn't bend the way our hands did. She would yip and yelp until Jackson spoon-fed her. She loved that. But I think Jackson was a bit too close to her to realize something wasn't right. He didn't see the way she looked at him when his back was turned. He didn't see the confidence she had when she stood up straight on her hind legs, or when she combed back the fur on her head. It stopped looking like a trick, and it started to look surprisingly natural. Less like a coyote, and more like a little person in a very strange costume. One day, when we came to see her, Jessie was sick. Her fur was matted and coming off in fistfuls. She kept sleeping, and her tongue was hanging out of the side of her mouth. Jackson was beside himself, holding her close and stroking her ears. She would wake up in short bursts, poking her cold nose into the cavity behind his ear. He would sit out there with her all day just to make sure she was getting better. I wasn't so sure she was. I loved that pup, but there was something strange about it from the very beginning. Maybe it had been sick all along. There must have been a reason it was left behind. While I wandered off to get some snacks, I decided to stop by the river where we'd found her. That one spot along the river is a bit eerie. It's the one place where the birds are silent and the dragonflies stay away. You can see the ants walking in circles. If you look into the water, you can see river stones aligned in repeated patterns. Something had happened there, but there was nothing that really stood out. There was nothing sick, dead, or rotting. I didn't know what to make of it. Not a clue, not a single one. But no matter how much snacks we gave that pup or how much we comforted her, Jessie just didn't get better. She developed this swelling on her stomach, and soon enough, most of her fur along the tail was gone. And one day, when we went to see her, she was gone. We could not find her. We tried to move on, but Jackson was taking it hard. He really, really wanted a dog. He'd wanted one for years. If it hadn't been for his sister being allergic, he probably would have had one by then. We tried making the best out of summer without her. After about a week, there was this one morning where my mom called me over. She used my full name, so I knew it was something serious. I just got out of the shower when I found her in my room, sitting on the edge of my bed. She had this stern look on her face, like she was already scolding me without saying a word. "Would you mind telling me what you've been doing?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean this mess," she said, tapping the bed. "Don't tell me you don't know." "I'll make my bed, sheesh." No, don't do that. Don't dismiss this." She wagged her finger at me, sighed, and pointed a flashlight under my bed. My heart skipped a beat. The underside of my bed was covered in empty snack bags, crumbs, and fur. Lots and lots of fur. Handfuls of it. And at the very end of it, I could see my crumbled up backpack the one we'd used as Jesse's first nest. "Did you bring roadkill into this house?" Mom asked. "What is this? How did you even... That's not... I didn't do that, Mom. That's not mine." "Oh, I'm sorry." My mom shrugged. "I forgot that this isn't your room and that this isn't your space to take care of. I'm so sorry. I forgot that you just drop by here sometimes." She rolled her eyes and handed me the flashlight. "I want it cleaned before you leave, and I need an explanation." I did my best to clean it up. Some of the fur got stuck in the carpet, as if something heavy had slept on it. Jessie had been missing for days. Had she been staying there? In my room all along? How the hell did she get in without anyone noticing? We didn't have a doggy door or anything like that. And more than that, where was she now? I went through my entire room. My mom mistook it for thorough cleaning, but I was looking for clues. There were paw prints in my closet, dirt on the edges of my bedroom door. I could tell something had been in there, but I couldn't tell what it'd been doing. It had to have been Jessie. It just had to, but how? By the time I was done cleaning, it was in the middle of the afternoon. My mom gave me a break and let me run around to play with Jackson. I ran to his house as fast as I could, bringing the backpack along. Before I even got to his house, I saw him coming down the other street, running to meet me halfway. We hadn't planned this. It just happened. He noticed my backpack, but I stopped him before he could ask. "She's been in my room," I said. "There's fur under my bed." "I know," he nodded. "I saw her last night." He looked a little pale, maybe from running. He stroked his arm and kept looking around, like he was expecting to see something. "She looked real sick," he mumbled. "Really, really sick." "Like, what kind of sick?" He shook his head and looked down, lowering his voice. "She didn't have any fur left," he mumbled, "and her face was all weird." "Weird how?" He didn't answer. He just kept his eyes on the ground and tucked his arms tighter. "Weird how, Jackson?" I repeated, but I couldn't get a straight answer. We decided we needed help. Hilltop is on the east side of the river, so there's plenty of ranches around. Since there are ranchers, there are veterinarians. There was this one veterinarian named Mario who worked downtown. He mostly worked cattle and the occasional sheepdog, but he was good people. He had 2 kids of his own, and he always showed up for career day. When we got to Mario's office, he could tell something was off. All year round, he was used to seeing middle-aged ranchers with baseball caps stumble in to complain about a cow. But now there were 2 quiet boys standing outside his reception. No wonder he came to see us right away. Jackson broke down in tears when he tried to explain. So I tried my best to give Mario the full story. I told him about how we'd found a coyote pup and how we'd cared for it when his mother abandoned it. Jackson interrupted me. "It's not just a pup," he cried. "Her name's Jessie." I corrected myself as Mario sat him down. I explained how Jessie was smart and funny and cute, and how we'd given her snacks and somewhere to sleep, but when I started telling him about her getting sick, I could see something changed in his demeanor. Back then, I thought he was just worried about our coyote pup, but looking back at it, he must have thought she was carrying something bad, something like mange or rabies. "So she lost all her fur," Mario said. "She lost her fur, and she's somewhere around your house?" "That, or in the shed," Jackson sniffled. "We made her a nest by the campgrounds." "And you think she's there now?" "There or at Jackson's place," I said. "He saw her there last night." Mario turned to Jackson, giving him a comforting pat on the shoulder. "Are you sure it was her?" he asked. "There's lots of coyotes around here." "I'm sure," Jackson mumbled. "I recognized her voice." Mario didn't understand what he was saying, but I could tell he was unnerved. He was about to say something, but couldn't get the words right. Instead, he excused himself and hurried to his phone. "I'm gonna need a little help," Mario admitted. "This is not really my wheelhouse." While Jackson and I wanted some medicine to help our friend, Mario had something different in mind. To him, it sounded like a sick animal was developing an unhealthy obsession with two local kids. Yes, he had good intentions, but he was scared for our safety. We asked what kind of medicine he could get her, but he didn't answer. Instead, he called in a couple of favors from some of the locals. He called our parents too. My mom and Jackson's mom got there at the same time. By the time they arrived, I could see 3 trucks pulling up in the parking lot. 2 of the men had hunting rifles. Jackson was beside himself, trying to make them listen. I didn't know what to think. I couldn't get what Jackson had said out of my mind. What had her face looked like? What happened? We were stuck in that office for a couple of hours. Jackson's mom had to run off to help out with their store, but my mom had nowhere to be. We sat around watching an old TV in the reception as Mario went with the hunting crew. We stayed there for well over 2 hours until my mom got a call as well. She had to go see a banker about something, and my dad was waiting for a signature. She had no choice but to drop us off at our house and have us promise not to leave. Straight to your room. Lock the door. Open for no one, she said. Either of you leave that room and I'm cramming your video games down the garbage disposal. There was no point in arguing. I kept my mouth shut as Jackson and I were ushered back to my place and herded into my room. My mom closed the door and rushed off with her phone glued to her ear. Alone, we just sat there for a while. This was no one's fault, really. Jackson noticed the pile of fur in the trash can. He didn't seem all that surprised. They're gonna find her, he whispered while thumbing through a comic book. Why not? 'Cause they're looking for coyotes, he continued. She don't look like no coyote no more. What she look like then? He shook his head. Like, weird. By evening, a bunch of trucks stopped outside our house. Some people were cheering and yelling. We could see they'd killed a bunch of coyotes and laid them out in the back of the truck. I could see it from the edge of my bedroom window, if you just leaned out a bit. Everyone seemed relaxed about it, cheering and smiling at one another. One of the older men were getting all kinds of attention, clearly showing he was the one who'd killed the most. You think they got her? I asked. She's not in there, Jackson said. I can tell. Should we say something? Do you want to say something? I didn't know. I wanted Jessie to be healthy again, but they weren't going to help her. That much was for sure. But if she was really sick, what could we do? Jackson ended up staying the night for a sleepover. We had hot dogs and french fries, and we got to stay up as long as we wanted playing on the computer. It was nice and all, but our hearts weren't in it. We were scared. If we told them about Jessie, they'd go kill her. And if we didn't, she'd still be out there with God knows what. So we kept our mouths shut and played our games, hoping an answer would pop at us. As the clock crept past midnight, we called it a day. When I came back from brushing my teeth, Jackson was already in his sleeping bag on the floor. I crawled into my bed and put away a couple of comic books. As I said my prayers and closed my eyes, I heard rustling. Looking up, I could see Jackson sitting up, looking out the window. Without a word, I looked the same way and listened. You hear that? He whispered. I heard something, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Not a coyote, that was for sure. Not a person either. Not a bird. What is that? I asked. It's talking. I got out of bed and tiptoed to the edge of the window, peering out at a steep angle. There was someone standing in the yard. Someone our size, with long brown hair. There's someone down there, I gasped. Does it have a weird face? I looked back at Jackson, then out the window. They were gone. There were scratches on the front door, like a dog trying to get in. I crawled down to Jackson and sat shoulder to shoulder, armed with nothing but a flashlight. We tried to listen, but it was hard to hear anything over our panting. Another scratch at the front door, then something sprinting down the gravel path of the west side of the house, something creaking as a weight came down on the trellis in the garden, then nothing for a while. The wind was picking up, so it was getting harder to separate the noises. Was that a tap from a branch or someone coming up the stairs? Jackson didn't take any chances. He pulled up a chair and barred the door, just in case. Then he looked up. "You guys have an attic?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "But we've checked there, no one's up there. But can you get in that way?" I thought about it and bit my lip. I shook my head. "Not unless you climb up the roof or leap about, 10 feet from the tallest tree in the yard." Jackson's eyes went wide. "What if she can do that?" he asked. "What?" I said, "What if she can do that? Can she get in?" We listened closely and held our breaths. There were too many sounds. Jackson hid under the bed as I moved the chair from the door. It banged against the edge of the desk, sending a bolt straight through me. It felt like I'd been shot by a sound. Suddenly, I heard something from upstairs. Something rhythmic. Footsteps? Maybe that's how she got in. There might be a hatch in the attic in my closet. I wasn't going to investigate. Jackson was safe under the bed, and I had to get my parents. I hurried into the hallway and ran all the way to their bedroom. I knocked and tried to open the door, but they locked it. A couple of seconds later, my mom opened, her hair in a tussle. Dad was sleeping soundly. "I think there's someone in the attic," I whispered. "What? Who?" "The coyote." I could see her face relax as her eyes rolled in a tired arc. Then something thumped. We both looked up. Was that a hatch being opened? Mom woke Dad up, and he grabbed a baseball bat from their wardrobe. He took point with Mom right behind him. Dad stepped into my room with the bat ready to swing, but there was no one there. He went in to check the closet. It was open, and the hatch in the ceiling was too. Mom looked out the window. Then I heard a whimper. "Jackson?" I whispered. "She's down here." We all turned to the bed, looking down. "She's down here. With me." I stepped back and got down on one knee. I saw a long face with a canine grin stretching from ear to ear. Human skin with rough brown looking fur hair. Big yellow eyes. It curled up next to Jackson, but now she was looking me straight in the eye. She was showing her teeth and salivating, just like she always did before she bit into a tasty treat. She opened her mouth wide, and an awful sound rolled out of her, like the grumbling of an empty stomach. She burped out a couple of syllables at me. Prettiest girl. Maybe she was just happy to see me. I don't know. But something caused her to throw herself out from under that bed. She leapt out with such a force that she slammed into me, knocking me out of the door. My dad got her by the hair and dragged her back as she snarled and yelped. Mom closed the door, screaming at him to hold her down. It was a full minute of these awful noises and screams. Someone yelled in pain, barks and snarls, glass breaking, and something heavy thudding into a thin body. At one point, I thought the door was about to buckle and break. As the sounds calmed, I put my hand on the door. I heard a cough on the other side. I turned the handle as I heard my mom from the other side. She was calm, uncomfortably so. "Don't come in," she said. "Call the police." "But Mom, go downstairs and call the police. Tell them there's been an accident." So I did. The police came, then an ambulance. They had to carry my dad out. Something had bit off 2 of his fingers and clawed out 1 of his eyes. They tried to save it in surgery, but he ended up losing it. Mom got a deep bite across the wrist, but nothing that a couple of stitches couldn't fix. I only saw the aftermath in passing, but my whole room had turned into a bloodbath. Jackson's mom came by later to take care of us. They had to drag him out from under the bed. I never dared to ask him what he saw, and he never had the stomach to tell me. He had stayed under there for the whole thing. The only thing he could say for sure was that Jesse got out. She went through the window. I tried to comfort him the best I could. Maybe it wasn't her, I said. Maybe it was a robber. He shook his head. She still had the hairpin. Looking back at that night, it's been almost 20 years. Life moves on. But my dad still has his scars. Mom does too. But she hides them well. They never understood what happened. They've been telling themselves that it was a wild animal and that it was just too dark to make sense of it, but it's impossible that they still believe that. They must have seen her. But we're just that kind of family who doesn't talk about that kind of thing. We talk about weddings, anniversaries, and birthday presents. Or if we're feeling chatty, Dad brings up whatever's going on with the Broncos. He's originally from Denver. We ended up moving there once the recession hit. Jackson and I have kept in touch over the years, but our occasional reunions would be delegated to yearly Facebook chats. That's why I'm writing this down. Earlier this year, Jackson reached out to me. He doesn't do that a lot. He didn't really send me a message. It was just a link to a picture. Last 4th of July, there was a bit of an event in downtown Hilltop. There were dozens of pictures of it, ranging from a chili cook-off to a tractor pull, but one of those pictures stood out more than the others. The second to last picture shows the local pastor and his wife, both holding up a prize ribbon. But if you look closely at the left-hand corner of the frame, you see a woman. A short, gorgeous woman with long brown hair and striking yellow eyes. And a pink hairpin with a blue sunflower. My papa had one rule: don't acknowledge Mima. Written by Garden_Lad. Growing up in Appalachia, I heard all types of stories of spooks and scary things that go bump in the night. The old Coleman, the headless mule, and Miss Myra from a ways away. You know them stories. As tough little country kids, none of them scared us. At least they ain't scared us half as much as the pitch black dark on a summer's night. That is, none except Mima. Papa never told us kids why. He just told us not to mention her. Us grandkids thought it was kindly strange because Mima was always part of our lives. He must have been married to the woman since God knows when. Mima put out our church clothes on Sundays. She made us grandkids breakfast every time we stayed over too, and it was always our favorites. But none of us were allowed to acknowledge her. I remember cousin Patty one summer morning came running from the creek clear across Peepaw's front acre saying Mima needed help. Patty said she was hurt something awful and he begged, cried for Peepaw to help. Now, I remember climbing over a grassy hill to try and take a look. Sure enough, Mima was there, turned over on her side in her black dress, wailing while she clutched her stomach. Papa clasped his wrinkly palm across his mouth so fast it felt like a slap. Shut your mouth now. Marry Sue and leave it be. He told me as tears welled up in my eyes, grew and trickled down through the hairs on the back of his hand. Papa was a gentle man, and surely hadn't treated me like that before. My heart was broken. I used Papa's office phone to call my mom. My mom had come and got me from Papa that day after I called her, and I tried to tell her what happened. She gave Papa a look that could kill. I remember how ashamed Papa looked. It was a few years later that Papa died. Like most fellas of his time and of that age, his heart just gave out one sunshiny morning. His funeral was intense. Us grandbabies, all 10 of us at the time, we sat together in a row on a wooden pew. We cried while folks gave speeches about our papa, speeches about how good of a man he was. We wailed like the dead. To some of my cousins, Papa was the only father figure they rightly had. They lost the only good man they'd ever known their whole lives, and at such a young age. Their own dad's been lost to shine, the mines, and the typical recklessness men folk tend to get into. Mima sat with us, at the end of her row. She was holding baby Christina in her lap. Christina was just 2 years old, and she surely didn't understand what was going on. But she picked up on the sadness somehow. The finality. Baby Christina was just woeful the whole funeral long, crying into Mima's bosom. Mima never spoke a word. While they put Papa on the ground, they left us grandbabies in a little wooden playpen sort of thing that they had in the rec room of the church. Our moms and dads just left us there. The only one that didn't leave us was Mima. Most of the cousins knew what Papa had taught us, never to acknowledge Mima. Definitely we knew never to speak with her. The little ones like Christina didn't know so well. In a corner of the playpen, Mima crouched onto her knees, her long, sheer black dress draped over her. Baby Christina sat, looking up at her, when I decided I had to do something. "Tina, baby, come here, baby. Cousin Mary misses you." I waved my hands at her, beckoning sweetly to come and play. I reached in my dress pocket and pulled out some kind of knockoff dollar store Barbie I had with me. I showed her the little blonde doll and waved it at her. Baby Christina's eyes lit up with wonder, and she started wobbling her way across the rug to me. Mima lifted her head, which was covered in what looked like a wedding veil, only black as coal. Her head angled to me and struck me with a cold sensation of fear like I had never felt before. "Come play Barbies, Tina." I waggled the doll towards baby Christina once more. "Come on, you can pick her pretty dress, baby." Something inside me told me I had to get baby Christina away from Mima in that moment. Baby Christina kept weebling and wobbling to and fro, getting closer. My older cousins Samantha and Jamie joined in. "Come on, baby," we all shouted. We ushered her towards us by gesturing with our hands. It was then that Mima stood. Only she was much too tall. Her veiled head and neck were so high, they bent forward across the ceiling. She got so close. Baby Christina, that is. She'd had one hand on my knockoff Barbie doll when Mima peeled her back in. Baby Christina cried something mighty, like nothing I have ever heard before or since. Mima had her now, clutched in her long arms. Behind Mima's veil, her cold, white, dead eyes bore holes into me and I think into all my cousins. Mima turned with baby Christina tucked under one arm and slid open a window with ease. Mima put one leg through and then the other, and within moments she was gone. When the police came, they asked us all sorts of questions about what happened. Us grandbabies tried to tell them about Mima taking our baby cousin away. The only thing was, there was no Mima. At least there was no Mima that any of our parents claimed to know. No one at our Papa's funeral that day that fit her description. It wasn't until a few years ago that my mother admitted to me that she was adopted by Papa. All my aunts and uncles were. They say that Papa never married. At least, not that they knew of. They act like they never knew about our Mima or any woman that cared for us grandbabies back at Papa's house. All I know for sure is that some dark mountain woman took my baby cousin that day. I only wish Papa had been alive to stop her. And alright guys, with that final story, that wraps up some unsettling horror stories from Reddit. And to be honest, these are some of my favorite horror stories I have ever read, hands down. They were all so good. I mean, that last one was so creepy, but the first three were so good as well. Like, these were just all such slow burn, good stories. I loved them. They were creepy. They gave me goosebumps, and I hope you enjoyed them as well. If you did, please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 1 million subscribers, so every subscription helps go towards that goal. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel. So check out some other videos, and please follow me on Instagram and follow me on Spotify. It helps more than you know. And thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means the world. Your guys' support is the best, and this community is the best on YouTube. I love you guys, and thank you so much for watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some horrific confession threads where I read some of your guys' viewers of the Snook channel's confessions and also some confessions from Reddit. And oh boy, it is a wild mix. And today I have some of the most disturbing, depressing, and just downright horrific confession threads I have ever read. So you'll want to make sure to stick around, and I appreciate you stopping by. It means the world. And make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel subscriber goal is 1 million subscribers, so please subscribe. It helps more than you know. And all right, this video will be long enough already, so sit back, relax, grab a drink or grab a snack, and without further ado, let's get into some horrific confession threads. I was successfully tried and convicted for the murder of 2 people. Ask me anything. I'm going to avoid details that could give my identity away, though I'm sure someone will put the pieces together. In 2007, I was successfully tried and convicted for the murder of 2 individuals. One was a 31-year-old male, and the other was a 73-year-old man. At first, they tried to get me for 3 more, but there was a lack of evidence. It was pretty obvious they were just trying to pin whatever they could on me, and those cases were dropped within a month. I believe one of them has since been solved. Short version: the 31-year-old R-worded and beat my pregnant girlfriend. She lost the baby days later. I was deployed at the time, so I couldn't be there for her. She knew who it was, but refused to tell the police. They have a habit of making things worse, so I don't, and still don't fault her for that. The month I got back, she confessed to me it was her friend from school. I found him on Facebook and got his address. I arrived at his house at 7:57 p.m. and broke in through a glass door in the back garden. He confronted me moments later, and I killed him. To this day, I truly don't remember exactly what happened. I just know I beat him, and he stopped moving. I knew he was dead after a few minutes, but I wanted to make sure, so I pulled out my gun and shot him twice in the forehead and cheek. Then I fired 4 more times into his stomach and neck. This next part is the part I regret. His 73-year-old father confronted me with a shotgun. All I really saw was a gun, so I shot him in the chest. He died instantly. Shortly after, the police arrived and I was arrested without incident. I served 12 years of a 23-year sentence and was released earlier this year. I was very lucky in the way I was treated by the legal system in my country. That's the short version, I guess. Ask me anything. One user says, "Why were you released so early? Isn't first-degree murder usually punished by life in prison? Also, what happened to your relationship with your girlfriend and other people in your life? Other than killing the 73-year-old, is there any other effects that you regret?" And the OP responds and says, "I'm not American. Different system where I am. I am still with my girlfriend now. Most of my friends are guys I served with, and we are still in contact. I regret the time I lost, and I regret making such a mess. I believe the male I killed deserved it. I simply wish I'd killed him in a manner that hadn't uprooted my life and led to another man's death. Not that his death was anyone's fault but my own. I pulled the trigger. I have to own that." Someone else says, "How much time was there between the incident with the 31-year-old man and his father? Were you just waiting around for someone else to show up, or did he show up there immediately after? Also, what's it like spending so much time in prison?" And the OP responds saying, "I killed the 31-year-old male within a minute. I sort of took it in before shooting his body. I was only a few seconds after I started shooting until the man turned up. All I saw was his gun, so I killed him. And boring. Very boring. Lonely at times too. World goes on and you're stuck. I'm not saying I deserved better, but the prison system is broken. 99% of the guys in there, petty crooks or serious criminals, come out worse than when they went in." Another user says, "What do you do now? Have you had any trouble finding employment? What does your family/friends think? How old are you now?" And the OP responds saying, "Bike mechanic. Yes and no. Never going to be able to get a regular job, but there are programs in place that help people like me. Most of my friends served with me, and don't judge me for what happened. I don't have any biological family. I'm in my 30s. Another user says, number 1, are you sorry for what you did? And number 2, about those other murders. You said one was solved, but what about the others? Why did they accuse you, and did you do it? And the OP replies saying, I regret killing the 73-year-old man. He was trying to defend his child, and he wasn't responsible. I don't regret killing the 31-year-old male, and I would do it all over again if I had a time machine. He deserved it. And then someone replies saying, sorry, just realized you never addressed my second question. Can you please? And the OP responds saying, sorry, forgot to address that. No, I didn't kill them. I'm not a naturally violent person and would never randomly kill someone. What happened was a result of me wanting to get revenge and then getting caught up in the moment and firing without cause. I believe they linked me to the case because I was within the general area and there were also firearms related incidents. However, I genuinely did not commit those crimes. I wouldn't kill someone without reason. It's illogical. Someone else asks, how much do you enjoy this AMA? Is it strange to relive it with strangers, or does it help you move forward? And the OP responds saying, it's interesting to discuss this with the general public. I wouldn't say I enjoy it, but it's interesting. I moved on a while ago. I just thought it would make for an interesting Q&A, and I've always wanted to do one and get some perspectives. I just don't want to become famous for what I did or deal with the media, so I never did it officially before. And then another user says, what other actions could you or would you have taken versus breaking into his house and killing him? And the OP coldly responds, probably would have killed him with carbon monoxide or dissolved his body and buried his teeth, etc., under the grave of a dog or something. That way, when sniffer dogs roll around, they'll dig up the dog's grave and the police will move on thinking that's all there was to find. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get away with murder if you just use your brain. I didn't. Confession. My wife cheated on me and I did something most people would regret, but I don't. Hey Snook, I'm a huge fan and I listen to your videos pretty much every day while I do my job. It makes time fly really fast. I don't need advice, but I kind of do need this off my shoulders. I'm embarrassed. I'm alone. I have no one to really tell this without feeling embarrassed or risking getting in trouble because I'm sure I would. I, 25 male, came home early and caught my wife cheating. I'm 25, and I never thought I'd be writing something like this. My wife and I have been together since high school. We started dating when I was 16. She was my first everything. We got married young, and I truly believed we were endgame. She moved in with my family when I was 18. She was 20. My mom basically adopted her, and soon after that, we saved up together and bought our own home. I never once laid a hand on her in anger, not ever. But she knew the one line she could never cross: cheating, especially under my roof. Yesterday started like any normal workday. I was exhausted and not feeling great, so I clocked out early without telling her. I figured I'd surprise her. Maybe we could just relax together on the couch. When I pulled up, her car was in the driveway, but the house felt too quiet. Then I heard noises from upstairs. Moaning, the bed creaking. My stomach dropped. I don't even remember walking up the stairs. My heart was hammering. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. My wife, completely unclothed, on top of some guy I'd never seen before. Both of them going at it in our bed. For a second, everything froze. Then the rage hit me like nothing I've ever felt. The guy saw me first and panicked. He tried to push her off of him, babbling that he didn't know she was married. My wife started crying, saying my name over and over like that would make it better. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just turned around, went straight to my closet, and came back with my Colt M1 911, loaded and pointed right at his face. "Get up," I said, calm as hell. He scrambled off the bed, unclothed and shaking, hands in the air. My wife was sobbing, trying to cover herself with the sheets. I kept my gun steady on him. "You liked being with my wife in my house? Good. Now you're going to beat the shit out of her while I watch." He looked at me like I was crazy, begging, "Please no, man." I clicked the safety off and told him it was either her or his brains will be on the wall behind him. His choice. I had nothing to lose. I wasted 9 years of my life, brought her into my home when she had nowhere to go. I didn't care anymore. He was terrified, but he did it. He slapped her across the face, then kept going when I told him to not hold back. Punches to the body, the face, whatever I pointed at. She was screaming and crying, begging me to stop him, telling me she was sorry, that it was a mistake. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction watching it happen. When she was a bloody, bruised mess on the floor, I finally told him to get out. He ran out of my house, unclothed, without looking back. I left her there like that. I locked myself in the guest room with the gun for a while, then just left the house. I knew she wouldn't call the cops. She'd be too scared of getting him locked up for what just happened. I've never been charged for any of it. I kicked her out of the house, and we are divorcing, and we are trying to make it as clean as possible, but we also live in a state where infidelity is very frowned upon, so she won't get anything and I won't lose anything. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now. The anger is there, but mostly it's this numb emptiness mixed with something else I can't name. 9 years wasted. Had to grow up and mature at such an early age for what? Do I regret making him beat her? Not for a single second. She crossed the only line I ever told her not to and wasted half my life. My 50 female daughter and husband, 15 female and 49 male, died. My son, 18 male, recently attempted S-word. I feel like part of this is my fault, and now it's too late. I am not sure if this is the right place for this. My daughter died from cancer, a very fast-acting cancer which she chose not to get treatment for. Over the span of 4 months, she deteriorated and then died. During this time, my husband turned into a severe alcoholic and drug abuser. I got depressed, and as did my son. Watching my daughter, the sweetest child in the world, pass away like that was horrific. My husband's alcoholism and drug abuse, he was doing pills heavily as well, although tried to keep it a secret, spiraled out of control to the point where he was drinking a $20 bottle of vodka every day, and then some more after. He would often go out and not come home for the entire night. My son kept on trying to get him to stop, and I sort of tried, but I was so depressed that I just didn't have the heart to put in much emotional effort into him. I isolated myself completely and was like a zombie. My husband died in our basement bathroom, covered in his own vomit. He died from a mix of huge amounts of alcohol and huge amounts of pills mixed together. I knew he was doing pills, but I never knew the real extent of it until we found his stash of pills after he died. His death came about 3 to 4 months after my daughter's death. After my husband died, I sort of woke up from my daze. But not long after, I fell back into it. My son also fell into a horrible, deep depression. It wasn't only his dad and sister dying, His grades fell apart. He got rejected from almost every college except for community colleges. He gained well over 100 pounds in the year after his dad died. Both of us were just a mess. I didn't leave bed most days. He stayed in his room, doing whatever he would do. Video games, I imagined. I didn't ignore the signs completely the way I did with my husband. I tried to reach out to him, get him into therapy for a while, but my own depression was so bad that I was giving up on everything. I think at a certain point, we just left each other alone. In the 2 months before, we barely spoke at all. It wasn't hard. Our house is big, our rooms are far apart. And then he tried to commit S-word by jumping. He survived. He got a broken foot and his toe was all mangled, but he survived. I saw where he tried to jump off. It was a long distance. I don't even know how he managed to only break his foot. I feel such a wave of guilt flow over me since the incident, both for him and for my husband too. I didn't pay enough attention. I didn't give them what they needed. I was selfish, honestly. I am their mother and wife, and I just isolated myself instead of being with them and helping them and getting them through this. I constantly think that if I was more attentive, more demanding for my husband to get sober, then this wouldn't have happened. None of it. Losing my daughter was horrible, but we couldn't control that. But this is our decisions. And my presence influences their decisions arguably more than anything. I just don't know what to do. I want to help my son, but don't know how. And I feel he has ignored my attempts to help him because I've ignored him for so long. I can't tell if he is still S-word. I can't tell if the second his foot heals, he is going to try again. I am awake in that I'm aware of my being in place instead of being a depressed zombie like I have been for the past 2 years. But I'm feeling hopeless again that I can't help. A year ago, I relapsed on H and recovered. I never told my wife or kids. I have a wife and 2 kids, aged 14 and 11. I was a H addict from 16 years old to 23 years old, which was when my first son was born. My wife helped me get sober and remains an amazing person and wife overall. Last year, my wife had surgery and got pain pills. I don't know what the fuck came over me, but I just wanted to try one to remember how good it felt. I was thinking, it wasn't H, right? So maybe I won't relapse? I can't even describe how stupid of a decision it was. I wasn't depressed or particularly yearning for H, but I just wanted to try it. Literally right away, it felt so unbelievably amazing that I took 2 more the next day. On day 3, it took about 4 to 5. I was high the entire day, feeling absolutely amazing. By day 5, I went to one of the local dealers and got drugs. Literally only took me 5 days to get back on it. My wife never got a hint. My kids never suspected anything. I was lucky this happened while my wife was recovering from her surgery. She was bedridden most of the day, so I was mostly free to do what I want. I didn't use a needle. I just blew it up my nose. I did it every single day for 2 weeks. The only suspicion was my daughter saying I was acting weird when I was high, and when my son went downstairs at night and I was mumbling because I was nodding out. He just assumed I was tired. I knew I had to do something. I wanted to just leave, run away to New Mexico or something and just do H the entire time, then maybe come back. At the time, it was literally all I wanted. I kept making these horrible, immoral excuses for my usage, like, oh, my kids are old enough, and my wife is a good mom. They don't even need me. I can just run away and do H on an island forever. That was the kind of shit I would think. I knew it was bullshit, but it's so damn powerful. I ended up quitting. I just sort of forced myself to stop, which previously when I was a teen seemed impossible, but now it feels like I have more to live for. It's been a whole year since then. I remember because my wife's surgery was the day before the 4th of July. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, OP, the cliche comes to mind, it's not a sin to fall down, but it is a sin to not get back up. You turn to a dangerous but familiar coping mechanism in an undoubtedly stressful time in your life. 2 kids, bedridden wife, etc. But you realized you were on a bad path and pulled yourself back. If anything, I'd say it's something to learn from and be proud of. Someone else says, I would encourage you to tell your wife for one reason and one reason only. Life happens, and it's possible you'll end up with pills in your home again due to some other reason. Your wife needs to lock that shit down and remove your ability to get them. It's the same as some alcoholics can never, ever have alcohol in their home or they will drink it. If you feel you can't tell her about your relapse and recovery, then tell her you struggled with having them accessible in your home, and if anything like that comes in again, she is going to need to lock that shit down. You did extremely well to bring yourself back, OP. All I'm suggesting is to not put yourself in that position again. And then someone replies saying, yes, I agree with this. OP should not hide it from her. Someone else says, it's crazy how quickly something that we worked so hard for could get taken away if we don't take the time to appreciate what we do have. Good for you. Someone else says, are you sure she didn't notice? Taking 8 pills from a bottle is pretty noticeable. Usually after surgery, they don't give you that many that you wouldn't notice 8 missing. And the OP replies saying, I probably should have mentioned that she didn't even use the pills except for the first day. I think she just assumed I threw the bottle out eventually when she told me she wasn't going to take them anymore. I've been blackmailing the local drug dealer. About 6 months ago, the druggy woman in my street had her brother move in with her. This guy is dodgy. He's ripping off disability. I've seen him breaking into cars and was watching my wife one night as she got home from work. Anyways, we had a knock on the door a few months ago. It was a junkie wanting crystal. She got the street numbers mixed up. I watched as she went into the house and thought, that's how they make their money. Anyways, I started watching the house. I work from home a lot and see a lot. I started to write down and watch every car that pulled up to their house. My wife works for a guy who's best friends to a cop, and she mentioned to him about the dealing. He said it'll take at least 12 months before the police would even investigate. So I started a Bitcoin account and sent them a letter saying I want $1,000 a week put into the account or I'll go to the police with everything I got. I put in a couple of photos and videos taken from the front of their house and with people and cars. So far, I've made $10,000, and with a baby on the way, it's coming in handy. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, playing with the devil, dude. I'm afraid for you. Another person says, good way to get yourself killed. And the OP says, I'm not in the States. This guy, from what I can tell, isn't a user of it. Does dope though. And then someone replies saying, you don't think drug dealers kill people in other countries besides the US? You are seriously creating a situation that will lead to jeopardizing you and your baby. And that's basically what everyone else in the comments was saying, how it's not worth jeopardizing your life blackmailing a drug dealer who may or may not be dangerous, and pay some money to track down whoever is blackmailing him and ending up hurting or killing the OP. But the OP did post about 22 days ago from the latest update, because this was posted 7 years ago. And so the OP is still alive, but whether or not something happened, I don't know. I bullied a kid who later died, and I feel terrible about it. Back in elementary school, there was this kid, we'll call him Jay, who was kind of an outcast. One day during recess, Jay scratched another kid who made the kid bleed. It was a total accident. I saw one of my buddies totally bashing Jay for doing it, and Jay started crying. Instead of trying to help out, I joined in and kept saying, "What is wrong with you?" and making Jay feel like total garbage. About 2 weeks later, I was in class and I got a cut on my finger and it started bleeding. Jay saw it and immediately ran to help and make a makeshift band-aid out of a tissue and tape to make sure I'd quit bleeding. Super sweet kid who decided to help me out, even though I was a total asshole to him. Jay ended up moving to a new school about 2 years later, and I found out he died by getting crushed by a trailer attached to a four-wheeler. I hope you're in a better place, Jay, and I'm so sorry for being an asshole to you. Such a sweet guy, and I'll never forget you, man. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, "I believe this. There was a girl in school when I was a kid who was mentally challenged. I never spoke a word to her. However, my friends and I would make fun of her behind her back. We were stupid kids. I heard she died a few years later of some disease, and I always think about her, even to this day. I was a dumb kid, and she was just another person trying to get by." And the OP replies saying, "Yeah, I'm not lying. Just looked up his obituary today and sent a message to his family." Another user says, "It seems we've all been mean as kids at some point in time. I was a total asshole to a lot of people. One kid in particular, I was extraordinarily mean to in high school. His family ended up dying in a car crash, which put him in an even darker place. I, of course, laid off of him after what happened, but I feel if I would have never been so hard on him, he would have been in a better place to get through this. I can't say I'll ever forgive myself for the ways I've treated people. I'll spend my life trying to make up for it. I've damned myself for sure. You get so caught up in things, especially in school, you don't realize how mean life itself can be. Support and love each other in life. It's already hard enough on people, especially our youth." And then someone else says, "Hey man, at least you feel remorseful. Just keep your head high. Think of them often and always treat people like it's the last time you're going to see them. You're a good person. Remind yourself that every day. Don't allow your future self to be a product of your past." I'm an ex-hitman that has just been released. Ask me anything. Hello, Reddit. Let me tell you my story. I've recently been released from jail on parole after serving 7 years. Let me explain why I was in the can. As the title says, I used to be a gunman for hire, or a hitman. I took many jobs that included extortion, kidnapping, blackmail, and some others I'm not extremely proud of mentioning. Anywho, I met some amazing people in the can, and I've got plenty of stories and lessons that I learned throughout my time. I'm also open to any questions about my old job. Thank you. And now let's get into the comments and questions. Someone says, "How did you get into that line of work? How did you get caught? Did you ever feel guilty during or after a job? Or ever consider a different line of work? How did you ever find the clients? I don't imagine you can post an ad on Craigslist or something, LOL. Do you have a significant other and or child? If so, do they know what you did? If so, what do they think? Do your parents know? If so, what do they think? What are your plans moving forward?" And the OP responds saying, "I was introduced to it by a friend of mine who was in the same line of work. I got caught due to evidence left at a kidnapping scene. No, I never felt guilty. I detached myself from the job a lot. We found clients throughout word of mouth that wasn't a big secret. But we had proxies that would find genuine jobs for us. Yes, I have a fiance. She didn't like me doing it at all, and in fact, she left me multiple times to do it. But since I got released, things have gotten better. Probably try an MMA/boxing instructor." Someone else says, "Do you feel your time in prison as well served or just a momentarily pause? Did it result in any real changes to your perspective on life and your purpose on it?" And the OP responds saying, "To be honest, I was used to the routine every day. At the beginning of my time, I kept to myself. But humans need contact and can't live in complete solidarity. Yes, it was scary. But if you don't beef with anyone, prison isn't as bad as people make it out to be. It showed me that people can truly change. I've met murderers that hated themselves for what they've done and believe they themselves shouldn't be released. So yes, the biggest change I had to deal with was adjusting to the outside world when I got released. Sorry for the long answer. Another user says, hardest hit to carry out either psychologically or physically? And the OP responds saying, well, I didn't feel much towards the jobs I have done, but it was very difficult in the beginning. We had to extract information from a POI, so it was my first time torturing someone to the extent we did it. I'll never forget it, but it was a giant learning curve. And the user responds to the OP there saying, understandable. I'm sure in time the faces and names kind of blur together and you just get desensitized to it. And the OP responds saying, yeah, it all depends on the mindset you have. If you think of them as people while you're doing it, you wouldn't get a wink of sleep. Another user asks, most gruesome way you killed someone? And the OP responds saying, I had a job in the late 2000s. It was me and 2 other people. We had a job to take care of a person that was harassing the wife of one of our customers. We were paid to get him to back off, but we did some digging on him and found out he was also a registered SO. I'm not an emotional guy. I'm 6'4" and an absolute unit, so stuff doesn't really faze me. But when children are involved, I'm a different person. I won't go into much detail here, but we spent hours in latex gloves, a dingy basement, rusty handheld tools such as hammers, a crowbar, a wrench, and pliers. We made sure he stayed conscious the entire time by administering some adrenaline we had obtained from a client. But eventually, it was too much for him, and he died due to his body going into shock from the sudden loss of blood near the end of our meeting with him. Someone else says, LMAO at the idiots believing this. Paroled after 7 years for multiple murders? Not even in the most liberal countries do they do that. And the OP responds saying, actually, cooperation and good behavior gets you off a long time if you actually admitted to your crimes in the first place. The crimes held against me weren't murders. And the person replies saying, so you're admitting to murders that you weren't charged with on Reddit? And the OP responds saying, never said I'd admitted to doing them, but planning on them, yes. Plus, I've already done my time. It isn't illegal to state public knowledge. And then the person replies saying, LMFAO, you admit to doing them, and it isn't public knowledge if you weren't charged with them. Just give it up, you can only fool fools. And the OP responds saying, the fact I'm not attempting to fool anyone, though, kind of means you're not believing the truth. Isn't that the meaning of a fool? And as I said, it was a charge of conspiracy to commit. And so what do you guys think? Do you think this guy's an actual hitman or ex-hitman posting on Reddit, or just another troll? I don't know, but leave your thoughts down below. I spent a year hiding from the government. Hi Snook, long-time listener. You've helped a lot of long shifts fly by, so I wanted to share something. This might be more tame compared to some of your other wilder submissions, but I feel like it could help some viewers out there. To start, growing up, I never wanted to join the military. It wasn't a family tradition or anything, just an erratic and spontaneous decision overnight. I was 19, lost and looking for a thrill. Or maybe just a purpose. The day after I submitted my info on the website, I got a call from a recruiter. And a month later, I was on the yellow footprint at MCRD San Diego. I was a problem recruit at first. I hated being there, and the mental grind was a massive shock to my system. I regretted it almost immediately, but during phase 2, something in my brain clicked and I became an example of a good recruit. My efforts paid off and I graduated with a meritorious promotion to PFC. I gave a huge amount of my transformation to one of my drill instructors. He destroyed me and rebuilt me into a prime Marine. He'd always say, "Pressure makes diamonds," and goddamn, did he put me through a lot of pressure. Then came boot leave. Typically, it's 10 days, but mine was extended to 30 because there wasn't space in the next MCT cycle. My family saw an immediate change in me, not just my appearance, but my demeanor. On the outside, I seemed like a brand new person, but something lingered in the back of my mind, like the hairs on the back of my neck were still clinging to my past. Around day 10 of leave, all that fresh boot motivation just evaporated. I started drinking heavily. I wouldn't even show up to recruiting duty without 99-cent banana liquor for breakfast, still hungover from the night before. When the day came to check into MCT, I flew back to San Diego a day early and booked a hotel. I can't even pinpoint the cause, but I had this heavy sense of impending doom, an unshakable anxiety that kept me up all night. I just laid there, ate a meal, and then I just didn't go. No big thought, just action. I booked a flight for the same day back home. For over a year, I was ghost. Once you hit 30 days, you're considered a deserter. I lived in a state of constant low-level terror for over 12 months. I worked odd jobs at night and took Ubers everywhere so I didn't have to drive. There were a few times I was in a car that got pulled over, and I just sit there with my heart hammering, waiting for them to ask for my ID and see the warrant. They never did. The paranoia kept me inside, but the shame is what kept me away from the people I loved. I missed a lot of family events and birthdays just because of the guilt. I hated showing my face and seeing the looks of disappointment, so I just used the medical reasons excuse to explain why I wasn't home. I felt like a fraud every time someone congratulated me. The only person who wasn't dumb enough to believe me was my 18-year-old brother. I never told him directly I was AWOL, but he knew. And also, AWOL means absent without leave, and also this can lead to severe jail time, 18 months to 5 years, or you'll also have a loss of pay and benefits. And so basically, it's a big deal to just desert the military, so that's why the OP is so concerned. But let's continue. He just looked at me and told me to fix it. I ended up severely depressed and tried to commit S-word a couple of times during that year, but I just couldn't run from my problems. Then the inevitable finally came, but it wasn't the police. My little brother committed S-word. I was so blinded by my own situation that I failed to see the demons he was battling. The shock snapped me back to reality. I didn't care about the jail time or the warrants anymore. Nothing mattered compared to him. A month after his funeral, I called the military police and explained everything. I flew back to San Diego, turned myself in at the gate, and was promptly arrested. I expected the worst, but it was mostly just a mountain of paperwork. I was demoted, did my 45-45, and got administratively separated 4 months later. It's been 8 months since I lost him. I sometimes wonder if that sense of impending doom I felt in that hotel was a warning about my brother, and I was just too self-absorbed to see it. If you're in a similar situation with the military, do yourself a favor and just turn yourself in. It's not worth the nightmare. And to the ones dealing with S-word thoughts, please reach out. Give a cry for help that screams at the whole world, because I promise you, sitting in the dark with your secrets isn't worth it. If anybody watching has a similar situation going on with the military, leave a comment on the video. I'll be checking them and I'll reach out to offer whatever advice I can. I miss you so much, bro. I'm trying to fix it. Just like you said. I just found out my husband is a R-wordist. I, 44 female, have been married to my husband for 17 years. We have 3 children together, ages 15, 13, and 10. We've had a perfect marriage. I didn't know my husband in childhood at all. He moved to my state a few months before we got together. We're about to be moving houses and I was packing things away, and I found this old journal. I thought maybe it was mine, but as I got to reading, I realized it wasn't. It was my husband's guilty confession about his friends and him having intimacy with this passed out drunk girl in the college in his hometown. It goes into great detail about the things they did to her and how she woke up in the middle of it. 17 years I spent with this man. He treated me so great. Amazing provider, partner, husband. He's an amazing father to our kids. We have 2 girls. I'm not sure how he can look at them, hug them, and know what he did to someone else's daughter. I'm disgusted. I'm appalled. I plan to divorce. This breaks my heart. I'm so in love with my husband, but I no longer see my husband. I see a R-wordist. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, I had this happen to me. I was that girl. And I woke up in the middle of it all. It's been 30 years, but the vivid images still haunt me. I killed my stalker, and I'm not sorry. I'm writing this to share a series of deeply unsettling events I've experienced recently. For several years, I was targeted by a stalker, an ex-boyfriend who became obsessed with me after I moved away for college. This situation involved persistent harassment through violent messages and several disturbing incidents where items were left at my home. I eventually discovered he had been remotely accessing my laptop's webcam using software he installed while we were dating. Although I reported these incidents to the police at the time, no action was taken. Approximately 4 weeks ago, while driving home late at night in a rural area, I struck an individual who ran into the road. Upon stopping, I discovered it was the man who had been stalking me. I immediately called 911, and he was airlifted to a hospital but unfortunately passed away en route. While I am physically safe and understand I'm being protected under the Good Samaritan law, I'm still processing the shock of this situation. My vehicle sustained only minor paint damage, and while the incident aggravated some internal stitches from a recent surgery, I am managing my recovery. I felt it was important to document these details and get this off my chest. I hope to not scare people or inspire to hit their stalkers with their car, but damn, if it didn't feel like a weight off of my chest when I heard he was pronounced dead. I'm a gambling addict. Ask me anything. That's me, a degenerate addict, and I often hate myself because I have so little control. I'm female, middle-aged, and my game of choice is slots. Yes, I dream of hitting it big. But if I did, I'd probably be one of those people you read about or hear about that would lose it all eventually. It's the dopamine hit. The thrill of what may line up when I press that button. I just want more when I get a win. And almost all of my wins end up getting played back, often at the same session. I've learned to only take the money I'm going to play with and that I need to get there, gas or food, because I know it's highly unlikely that I'm walking out with anything. I've drove away with less than $2 in change in my pocket and been hungry. Not starving, but hungry for a meal on my way home. I've done without food or buying less food during the week so I can take more cash to the casino, barely paying or paying late the essential bills, and now behind on my car payment because of my addiction. It spiraled badly in the last 2 months as I started going to a nearby casino, and after winning and playing it back a few thousand, I got sucked in. I kept getting good free play offers on average 3 times a week for a couple of months now, so that made it easier to keep going back and I'd take some cash that I should haven't been spending. The free play has dried up now, except one more lowish offer tomorrow. I'm telling myself I'm not going tomorrow, but it's tempting me. And I lie to myself, saying just one more time, and maybe I will win enough to get myself out of this hole, but chances are, if I did get lucky, I just play it back and walk out with that feeling of pure hatred of myself and feeling hopeless. I've been a gambling addict for 15 years, spiraling every few months. It's hell. And now let's get into some of the top questions and comments. Do you logically understand that you will always lose money, even if you win small amounts? If so, what keeps the thrill going? Is it the flashy screens and the numbers? And the OP responds saying, yes, I do logically understand. It's the dopamine hit for me. Slots these days are designed to hook you, and they are very addictive by design. They have always been, of course, but the last 10 years, probably more so than ever. Someone else says, have you tried to get help? I had an early stage addiction, so I forced myself to play them at the lowest bet until I hated them. I don't even think about playing them anymore. And the OP responds saying, I've went for help, but nothing sticks long term. Another user says, how did it start? I can understand drug addictions, but never gambling addictions. The few times I gambled, I just slowly lost my money till I left. Even when I won, it was just stressful because I wanted to keep gambling, but I knew I should have just left with the money. I don't know. It was just not fun at all to me, just stressful to be honest. And the OP responds saying, maybe the root of it is my genetics. My father was an alcoholic. I liked games as a kid, board games, card games, and sometimes the occasional game of poker. I don't recall the poker games being for real money, however. A very difficult life started for me in my preteen years. Maybe it was the small hits of dopamine and my distraction from life that rooted it way back then. My first trip to a casino was in the late 90s, and shortly after I realized that this could be bad for me. I don't go that often back then, and sometimes I would go a few years in between visits, so it wasn't an issue for me back then, but I felt the danger. When I really sank the boat was when I started gambling online. Some poker and then slots. That was about 15 years ago. I no longer gamble online, but now there is a casino about 1.5 hours away. And then someone replies saying, damn, an hour and a half? How frequently do you go? Do they give you rooms? And the OP says, the last 2 months, 2 times a week, occasionally a 3rd time in the same week. The free play offers had a lot to do with my binge. It's over now. Big offers of free play is done, and I just do not have the cash because of what I've blown through in the last 2 months, and I've got to catch up with my car payment. I've even lost my weight because I've played my grocery money. How stupid is that? Someone else says, have you ever lost everything? And the OP responds saying, I've played away almost every bit of money I had with me on most trips, sometimes going home with less than $1 and change. Luckily, I don't have rent or mortgage. I have the usual expenses, and I'm behind on my car payment because of my latest binge. And we have not heard from the OP since then. This was about 2 years ago, so who knows what happened to the OP, if they kept spiraling and kept having these binge sessions and binge gambling sessions, or if they finally got the help they needed. But I really hope the OP went to some Gamblers Anonymous or got some help or went to therapy or something to help get over this addiction, because, I mean, the OP said it. They've been gambling on and off for 15 years. And obviously they can't keep it up because the OP is behind on their car payment. They're not feeding themselves. And obviously it's very dangerous. And so I really hope that the OP was able to get off of gambling and get the help that they so desperately needed. My mistake could cost my patient's life. This has been eating away at me for so many days. I'm not sleeping well, nor can I even live my life without this hanging over me every second of my day. So forgive me if I mess up this post in any way. This patient has been with me for months. It's a complicated case, so we couldn't let them go home with all the knots tied up. So this day I decided to give them some release of their pain, a heat treatment. You can call it malpractice, incompetence, a lack of judgment, but what happened was that it was too hot and I didn't pick it up because of their skin condition. So we only found out the next day that they had developed a blister. All things considered, it could have been worse. Over the next few days, it was healing well. I went on holiday a short while after that. Also, just to interject, I think we have to assume this is a doctor, and the doctor messed up treating the patient. I just wanted to interject there, but let's continue. But it all came crashing down while I was away. The broken skin developed an infection, and now my patient's not even under my care anymore. They have been sent to another setting to get better care. I know how this story can go. We know how infections can go. It's still an ongoing case, and I literally feel like dying every day knowing I have caused harm to this person and knowing what could happen at any time. I made a mistake. It was 100% my fault and that of my incompetence. I work in the healthcare sector, so I have to keep as much confidential as possible, but I really have to talk to someone before my thoughts of S-word get the better of me. Edit. I know this post is old, but I'd like to post an update. Mostly for myself. In the time I originally posted this, the patient returned to my care, and we were able to send the patient home. Though it was in a less than ideal state, we've reached this point and it's honestly rattling. I'm still dealing with the consequences of my actions, and some days are a little tougher than others, but at the very least, I'm moving forward. Thank you to all those who've responded. It helps a lot to keep me grounded, and I still come back from time to time when I feel like I need it. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Mistakes happen. In your sector, it is more costly, but it doesn't mean we're not human. Your intentions were good, and you will learn something to benefit you and your patients in the future. Yes, it sucks, but you doing something stupid will not help make this better. Think of all the people you have and will help in your life that you can't if you died. One mistake doesn't erase your heart. And the OP responds saying, "Thank you so much. It's been difficult keeping this quiet, so posting my feelings as well as reading your comment has lifted a lot of weight I put on myself. I should only think of how I can be better to my current and future patients from here on." Another user says, "From an outside perspective, I'll say that it doesn't really seem like you're at fault. We both know that you had good intentions and that it was just a mistake. But I know that it's a very real issue for you and that you need someone in your corner. Accidents happen, and so long as you try to make up for / fix what's wrong, I believe you've made a point to warrant forgiveness. Don't be too harsh on yourself. Just learn and apply what you learn to the next situation." And the OP responds saying, "Hey there. I know it's been a few days, but I'd still like to thank you for your responding. My way of coping right now is to push this down and focus on the tasks at hand instead, but when the difficult feelings dredges back up again, I come back to this post to pull myself back together. It may not be today, but I do believe one day I'll learn to forgive myself." I beat up a kid because he kicked my elderly dog. I was reminded of this when I read a venting post in r/dogs about a woman who restrained herself from slapping a child when the kid kicked her dog. Several years ago, I was in a similar situation, and I didn't restrain myself at all. When I was 23, my 14-year-old Beagle mix was diagnosed with a fast-acting cancer that had already started to spread. I'd had him since he was 1, and I made it my mission in life to keep him as comfortable and happy as I could. There was nothing he loved more than walking in the park, so I packed him up in the car and went for a short and slow walk every day. He was the sweetest, friendliest boy, so it was absolutely shocking when, on one of our walks, a boy we'd never seen before, who was probably 10 to 11, ran up to us screaming, "I hate your ugly, gross dog, lady." My initial response was, okay, we're just passing by, so goodbye then. Then the little jerk let out an inhuman screech and ran forward and kicked my dog in the stomach. My poor boy yelped and whimpered and crumpled to the ground in pain. And the kid laughed in that horribly demonic way only a child can laugh, and then reeled back to kick again. Before that moment, I had never experienced rage as an adult. I'm a pretty evenly keeled person, and I'm typically a pacifist and diplomat. This was the first and only time in my life that I saw red. Before my brain had even processed what happened, I'd already lunged at the kid and sort of half grabbed, half shoved him by the neck and pushed him to the ground very hard. He immediately burst into tears, and that's when I should have stopped, but I couldn't stop. It was the only time in my life when I felt like I wasn't in control of my actions. The kid was scrambling to get up, and I kicked him really hard in the side, several times. Then I grabbed him by his sweatshirt hood and screamed in his face at the top of my lungs. I screamed some really horrible things at him, something like that I'd find him and kill him slowly if he ever tried to hurt another animal again, but it felt like the words were just erupting out of me with no thought or effort. At that point, the kid was ugly sobbing and apologizing and begging me to let him go, which I guess helped me to sort of snap out of it, because I felt myself, or lack of a better description, return to my body. I felt totally numb and sort of inebriated, but the rage was gone. I let the kid go and told him to go find his mom, and hastily added, "And don't ever kick a dog again." He ran off crying. I scooped my dog up, hustled to my car, and left. I was oddly calm. I drove to the vet and told them only that a child had kicked my dog and ran away, and I wanted to get him checked out. They checked him out and said there was no serious damage other than the beginnings of a bruise. I drove us home, got into the shower, and sobbed for hours. I had no idea until then that I was capable of doing anything like that. I started therapy the next week to deal with the anger issues I didn't know I had until then. And I've never had another issue like that. I didn't go back to that park for years, for fear of running into that kid again. Mostly for fear that his parents would be there and get me arrested. I took Freddie to a different park that was a little further from the house, but he actually liked it more because it had good, soft dirt to dig in, until his final day on Earth. I think about that kid sometimes, though. I wonder how my actions impacted him. Did I scare him straight? Did I teach him to be more violent? Does he have some complex about short women now because a short woman beat him up when he was a kid? He's got to be at least a teenager by now. I wonder how often he thinks about it, if ever. I wonder if he sees himself as being entirely the victim, or if by now he's loved and lost a pet, and understands the drive behind what I did. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, "Just recently I had a guy at an off-leash dog beach repeatedly swing a branch at my dog and abuse me. If it weren't for his young children being there with him, I think I would have been looking at a pretty serious assault charge, to be honest." Seeing someone unprovoked do that sort of shit to your dog is also probably the most rage-inducing thing I've experienced in my adult life. And the OP replies saying, "Since Freddie, I've always had very large dogs, Rotties and the like. And I think one of the reasons I made that choice is because most people don't mess with them. Seeing anything bad happen to my or anyone's dog is still the only thing that makes me top shelf angry, and probably the only scenario in which I would act out that way again. People who abuse animals are the lowest of the low, and I'd have no issue beating the shit out of any adult who so much took a swing at my dog. But it's the fact that I did it to a child that I feel I was wrong." Someone else replies saying, "You didn't do serious damage or cause any horrible mental trauma. Normally, I don't condone things like that. But who the fuck kicks a dog in the stomach and calls it ugly for no reason? I can't imagine someone being so shitty. Worst case scenario, you taught the little shit a lesson about being an asshole to animals. Don't stress too much about it." And the OP responds saying, "I very possibly broke one or more of his ribs. If I'm being honest with myself about how hard I kicked him, like he definitely didn't die from his injuries or anything close to that, but he was fine to run off. So he was fine enough to recover. But he may have had some lasting injuries. I don't stress about it as much as I do think about it. It's the only violent thing I've ever done to someone who I was physically stronger than. I know that he was an awful little punk kid, but I still feel bad for not being a better adult and more in control of my actions." And all right, guys, that wraps up some horrific confession threads. This was a wild video. And what did you think? Comment down below your thoughts. I read every single comment on every single video, so please leave your comments, concerns, and feedback down below. I love you guys, and I love the comments and the community we've built here. And I'm glad that some of you guys can get some relief from sending in a confession. And if you'd like to see a confession in a future video, please send it to the email in the description. Thank you. I appreciate everyone who sends in their confessions, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of relief if you're holding on to anything super, deep or something that disturbs you. And I think it's nice to have that outlet for many people. So thank you everyone who sends in their confessions. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will enjoy some other videos on the channel. So go check out some other videos on the channel. Thank you. And all right, this was enough yapping for me. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And this is Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.